Hello and welcome back to my channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Let's begin. Chapter 10, Evolution. When Kazidor re-emerged from the plume of Ryatsu his Resurrection had created, he had transformed into a mixture between his Arrancar form, which was essentially human in shape, and his anthropomorphic lizard-like body that he had first found himself in when Kazidor won against Ichigo. His vest was gone, instead replaced by a white scale-like armor with intricate red tattoo-like markings that began from his hollow hole. The armor encompassed Kazidor's entire torso, but ended at the shoulders, where frills that would befit any lizard grew to either side and around the back of his neck. Kazidor's hair was longer now, down to his shoulders in length. Down his arms were crimson wavy lines, exactly as they had been in Kazidor's original hollow form. His hands grew slimmer and longer, resembling claws, while his bare feet had changed shape, each foot now having 3 claws, like a bird's talon or a reptile's hind claw. His crimson leggings had gained a white pattern to them mirroring that of the crimson on white of his armor. Behind Kazidor was a thick, powerful white tail about 5 feet long, with the same blood-red wave pattern as on his arms, though the tip was purely that red color. The tail was only about 2/3 as long as the one his purely hollow form had had, but Kazidor was glad for that. It was just long enough to be useful in battle, without being so long that it could easily be used against him. Kazidor's mask had changed as well, reforming the top half, down to the upper jaw, so only Kazidor's lower jaw to his chin was visible. The left half was almost completely red, with only a few traces of white, and the right half was white as bone. Zangetsu had become Tensa Zangetsu, the familiar black Japanese long sword that had led Ichigo to defeat Kuchiki Byakuya, and Kazidor himself. Kazidor smirked arrogantly as he held Tensa Zangetsu in his hand, confident in his win. "You want to play, Nitra? Let's play." Inwardly, Kazidor was glad his voice had returned to his own hollow voice. It felt strange hearing Ichigo's tones from his own lips. "Not a bad resurrection," Nitra admitted. "You might even be able to beat the old cat over there." Grimmjow growled. "But there's no way you can cut through my hierro." Kazidor grinned wickedly even while listening to Ichigo talk rapidly in his head. "You're in full-blown hollow form now, I don't think you can use much, if any, Shinigami powers here." "No Kido, no Shunpa," Ichigo thought quickly. "You are correct," Zangetsu concurred. "The Shinigami power left within your body is insufficient for any practical usage, save identifying you as an Arrancar." "Well, that SCKS. Guess it's time to wing it then." Kazidor dashed with all his resurrection-given speed at Nitra, and this speed was not insignificant, even minus Shunpa. It was on par with Ichigo's Shinigami form Shunpa speed. He swung Tensa Zangetsu, only to be blocked by 2 of Nitra's scythes, and 2 more were swinging back at him. "Move, DMN it," Kazidor demanded of his body, pumping Ryatsu through it. To his surprise, his hollow Ryatsu instinctively formed a pattern based on Kazidor's need, and he found himself out of the scythe's reach, a sudden minor booming sound echoing from where he'd been. "What was that?" Ichigo demanded. "That almost sounded like you broke the sound barrier." Grimmjow smirked, recognizing Kazidor's sudden stop as surprise. "Was that your first time using Sonido?" "Sonido?" Kazidor repeated, burning the word to memory. "Must be that high-speed technique I just accidentally used. I imagine that most basic hollow techniques are first done instinctually," Ichigo mused. "We can ponder it later, right now, I have someone to fight." "No matter," Kazidor replied to Grimmjow with a wider grin than before. "Now for the ultimate question, strength or speed?" He disappeared in a burst of resurrection-enhanced Sonido, appearing behind Nitra and slashing with all his strength. Unexpectedly, Nitra used the top 2 of his 4 arms to block by flipping his scythes over his shoulders, catching Tensa Zangetsu even as Nitra moved to try to tear Kazidor's weapon out of his grasp. Kazidor Sonido-ed away just in time to avoid being cleaved in 2 by the third of Nitra's arms. Unwilling to give up the fight, Kazidor reappeared at Nitra's left side. "Getsuga Tensho." Nitra didn't even get the time to curse as one of his arms completely obliterated by the technique, though he did manage to Sonido away before his torso was injured. DMN, he's better than I thought. I must kill him, or he will kill me. If not now, then when he has evolved to a Jutchas. Nitra thought furiously, channeling his Ryatsu to the stump of his missing arm. I'll just save this for when I have an opportunity. Getsuga Tensho. Kazidor cried, suddenly appearing within Nitra's guard, too fast for the Espada to block or counter. Or so Kazidor thought. Suddenly, he was impaled in the stomach, through his scale-like armor, by another hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. I know I destroyed one. What the hell? Ignoring the pain, he tried to cut off Nitra's head with his blade. Nitra used the hand to throw Kazidor away before he could finish decapitating his foe. Regeneration is such a useful ability, Nitra gloated confidently. With my Hiero powerful to stop most anything, and my regeneration to quickly heal up anything that gets through, I'm unstoppable. Kazidor got to his feet, his own high-speed regeneration already mostly done healing up his injury. What do you know, sounds like we have something in common, Kazidor observed with a maniacal grin. I know it takes quite a lot of Ryatsu to regenerate an injury, especially one as grievous as losing an arm. So tell me, Nitra. He hooked the end chain link from the hilt of Tensa Zangetsu on one of his fingers and began twirling it around, building up another Getsuga. How many times can you regenerate it before you're out of power? I won't need to. Nitra cried out in success, seeing Kazidor's open stance as a sign of weakness, rushing in and attempting to slice Kazidor in three with his two right arms. Kazidor merely disappeared, reappearing behind Nitra, and slightly to the left. Too slow. Getsuga Tensho. Nitra was suddenly hit point blank by an extremely powerful Getsuga, even more powerful than the one that had taken his arm. It sliced into his back, cutting very deeply into it despite his Hiero. However, between his Hiero and regeneration abilities, Nitra was not out of the fight yet, and spun around on his heel to cut off Kazidor's left hand. Kazidor completely ignored the loss of his free hand and stabbed with his sword, which was glowing darkly with the power of yet another Getsuga. It pierced Nitra's right shoulder before Kazidor viciously swung downwards, cutting off both of Nitra's arms this time before disappearing with Sonido, reappearing on the other side and using a point-blank Getsuga to completely obliterate the other two of Nitra's arms. Kazidor barely used Sonido in time to narrow avoid being impaled in the stomach again by a third arm on Nitra's left. Wait, what? He backed off to regenerate his free hand, and to figure out what had just happened. Hiding your power, are we? Nitra extended the third left arm, and then a third right arm. Yeah, I have 6 arms, not just 4. With a flick of his wrists, the other two suddenly had scythes of their own. It's a pity I didn't catch you with that, you truly are quite fast, but I refuse to lose to a newborn hollow. Grimjow watched with narrowed eyes. A battle of attrition, it looks like, he thought to himself. They both have regeneration, and they're both insane enough to completely ignore any wounds that don't interfere with their ability to attack. Heh, Kazidor chuckled. No matter. I'm faster than you, and I can cut you. Your Hiero means nothing to me. All you have are 6 weapons. You've lost this one way or another. If you win, you've succeeded in taking out a Jillian Arankar. Well done, he added mockingly. If you lose, it's even worse. Who cares about reputation? Nitra countered. I just want a good fight. Kazidor grinned widely. Now you're talking. Getsuga Tensho. Nitra put all of his arms up to block the Getsuga, using his weapons to hide the fact that his mouth was open, and his tongue, tattooed with the number 5, was sticking out. He quickly charged a Siro and fired, moving his weapons just out of the way. The Siro pierced through the Getsuga, covering most of the distance to Kazidor before he realized what was happening. It took Kazidor by surprise, but Kazidor narrowly managed to escape the full brunt of the Siro, losing his left foot despite Sonido. Shunting more Reiatsu to regenerate it, the orange-haired Arankar smirked. A Zero? Nice improvisation. Betcha mine is better. Ha! Fine then, Jillian, show me your Zero. Noida invited mockingly. His left foot almost completely regenerated now. Kazidor put his right foot back, twisting himself so he was looking down his left arm, which was pointed directly at Nitra. He pointed the middle three claw-like fingers at his foe and focused his power. A trifocused crimson orb, spinning clockwise from Kazidor's point of view as some of the energy spun off, began growing at the tips of his fingers. Zero! Kazidor bellowed triumphantly as he fired it. Noitra's eyes widened as he felt the amount of power in that Zero, and he knew, even if he would never admit it, that his own Zero didn't match up. The Espada-only Gran Rey Zero would completely dominate it, however Nitra didn't want Aizen to interrupt his fun. While fighting regularly occurred among normal hollows, and use of resurrection could be attributed to training, the Gran Rey Zero was expressly forbidden in Las Noches, and even use of it in Minos Forest would prompt an immediate investigation, and test to see if the opponent was worthy of joining the Espada. This was the last thing Nitra wanted to happen. Nitra managed to dodge, but once again lost one of his arms, in this case, the lowest one of his right side. This is getting old, Jillian. Nitra taunted. You hit me, I lose an arm or two, I hit you, you lose a limb, we both regenerate and start anew. Kazidor waggled his fingers at Nitra. Perhaps so, but you apparently haven't realized. I do my damage more consistently, and I have far more Reiatsu left than you do, if my senses are correct. I will win this battle of attrition, and then devour you. Nitra, I'm disappointed, a voice suddenly rang out. Everyone there turned to face a new figure in Aizen's outfit. If Kazidor's senses were telling the truth, this character had no hollow power in him whatsoever. This was only enhanced by the fact that Kazidor could see glimpses of the usual Shinigami black colors underneath the loose white uniform. Shinigami. Ichigo, is this Aizen? In Kazidor's inner world, Ichigo shook his head. That's not Aizen. Not Tosen either, Kazidor replied with narrowed eyes, not that anyone could see behind his mask. Must be Ichimaru Jin, the third traitorous Taicho, Ichigo deduced. Ha! Kazidor quickly inspected the figure. Jin had silver hair with a slight purple tint, while his body was quite slim. His eyes were curiously narrowed to slits, and given the slightly mocking smile on his face, his expression could easily be placed on a fox's face. Who are you? Kazidor demanded. Me. I'm Ichimaru Jin, the traitor responded cheerfully. As you plainly deduced, I work for the same person these two do. It is rather obvious, given that you all wear the same uniform, with minor alterations, Kazidor replied sarcastically. So why are you here? Putting a leash on these two rabid dogs. Grimjow bristled. Rabid dog am I? He only just managed to contain his urge to lunge and try to rip Kazidor's throat out. As soon as Jin's gone, I'm gonna. You'll do nothing, Jin responded in that same cheerful manner. Not yet, in any case. Anyways, I've given you my name, what's yours? Kazidor de la Luna. Tell me, Kazidor, how did you become a complete Arankar? Jin asked curiously. The only ones I've seen are those created through the Hugyoku. Kazidor shrugged. I just remember waking up as a hollow, and when I relaxed I looked rather human. Maybe there's more than one of these, what did you call them? Hugyoku. Whatever, I'm out to go eat some more, fighting made me hungry. Would you be interested in joining us? Jin proposed. If you were able to fight on even grounds with Nitra you'd at least be the Sexta Espada, though you would have to be tested. Grimjow growled at the idea. He goes, he dies. I will find and eat him, and work my way up to Aizen so I can kill him. Not interested in the least in belonging to any organization in which I'm not the king, Kazidor replied bluntly. You have nothing to offer me, and I don't feel like working for anyone but myself. Even if I did feel like working for someone else, you're obviously a Shinigami, and I bet your ruler is one too. That means that you must have betrayed Soul Society. And how could I trust a traitor not to kill me when my back is turned? No, I refuse to work for you. The smile on Jin's face never dimmed. Oh well, if that is your choice, I suppose I can't force you. Grimjow, Nitra, we're going back to Las Noches now. Aizen-sama will be most disappointed. He was anticipating a new, powerful Espada since you both felt the need to use Resurrection. Grimjow sighed and returned to his pre-Resurrection state. Nitra did the same after he realized that he wouldn't get to fight anyone now. Seeing this, Kazidor followed suit. He wanted to keep his Shinigami skills available, even if they were watered down a bit. I'm still far more skilled at Shunpa than I am at Sonido, Kazidor recognized. I'll need to practice using Sonido and Siro faster. Ichigo remained silent. He was busy looking through Kazidor's eyes, keeping a wary watch for trouble. He and Zangetsu had long since dispatched the hollows that Kazidor had consumed. My, you look exactly like Kurosaki Ichigo. Jin exclaimed in surprise. I should have realized from the orange hair. Grimjow had the same reaction, Kazidor replied. Maybe he was turned into a hollow, and that became me. It doesn't matter. Jin's grin grew wider. Aizen-sama will be most pleased with this information, even if you don't join. I will likely see you later, Kazidor de la Luna. He vanished with Shunpa, and the two Espada quickly followed suit. Kazidor shrugged. So, those were the 5th and 6th Espada. 7th through 9th must SCK almost as bad as Yami. They must have some sort of skills, or they wouldn't have become Espada, Ichigo reminded his alter ego. Don't underestimate them. Whatever. I'm gonna go eat some more, like I said, fighting made me hungry. He grinned. Time to start going after Ajuchas. Orihime-chan. Wah. Inoue jumped in surprise, spinning around to see Yoruichi the cat. Don't scare me like that, she said, breathing hard and trying to get her heart to stop trying to hammer its way out of her chest. Sorry. Yoruichi sounded more amused than anything else. You up for a trip to Soul Society? Chad found his grandfather, but he needs your special brand of healing. It may take a few days to get there. Inoue's face hardened as she nodded. All right. Let me just pack a lunch, leave a note for Tatsuki, and let's go. Several minutes later, they arrived at Urahara's, and opened the gate to Soul Society. Meanwhile, Chad returned to the farmhouse from working the fields, immediately going to check on his abuelo. He vaguely registered everyone else doing the same. He really is loved by these people, he realized fondly. Good. How's he doing? He rumbled to the man who had been tending his abuelo's wounds. Better than we expected, he answered with a smile. His will to live and heal must be quite strong. Chad smiled back. I wouldn't be surprised if it was his will to protect us all. Ha! That would be just like him, wouldn't it? Laughed one of men that Chad had worked with in the fields. Oi, Sato-san, when did you say that your special healer would come by to fix his arms? Another asked. My messenger likely made it to her by now, but she doesn't have a high-speed technique. It will likely take her a few days, Chad murmured. With luck, she arrives before Abuelo wakes, and he will never know that he lost his arms at one point. Yeah. The mood turned somber. Masataro, please let us know if Oscar wakes up. The healer smiled and nodded. Chad felt his stomach rumble, he had not eaten since breakfast earlier. Sorry. He muttered. Any chance of some food? Of course. We keep some food in stock just in case anyone with spiritual power comes to us, Masataro replied. A few of the children do, as a matter of fact. Please, go eat. It's the least we could do for you saving our leader. Hitsugaya Toshiro was not having a good day. He'd finished reporting to Yamamoto Sutecho, and had been denied temporary reinforcements to replace Kurosaki Ichigo's presence. He'd sent Aburai Renji to fetch the Quincy Ishida Uryu to discuss the possibilities and implications. Shortly thereafter, Renji had returned and announced that he couldn't find Ishida, and Rukia couldn't sense his Ryatsu anywhere. DMN it, could this get any worse? Toshiro murmured under his breath. Hitsugaya Taicho. Matsumoto Ranjaku, Toshiro's Fukuteicho, rushed in. Inoue Orihime has disappeared. I need to learn to stop tempting fate, Toshiro thought bitterly. Are there any clues as to her whereabouts? She did leave a note to her friend Tatsuki. It mentioned that Yoruichi-sama had taken her to Soul Society to heal someone, Ranjaku replied swiftly, procuring the note from in between her BRSTS. So let me make sure I've got this straight. Kurosaki Ichigo is training with Yoruichi-sama, Sato Yasutora has been in Soul Society for an unknown purpose, Ishida Uryu is nowhere to be found, and now Inoue Orihime has gone to Soul Society as well. Toshiro put his forehead down on the table he was working at. So now it's completely up to us to defend Karakura town. I don't like the odds, Taicho, Ranjaku conceded. Nor do I, Matsumoto. Nor do I. He looked at her piercingly. You and Rukia find the Quincy. I don't care how you do it, just do it. Yes sir. She disappeared with a flash of Shuinpa. Toshiro got up and made his way to the interdimensional communicator. Looks like I need to talk to Soifun Taicho. A few minutes later. Hitsugaya Taicho, I am quite busy. What is it you need? Soifun asked, getting to the point. I need you or one of your Onomitsukido to locate Yasutora Sato, and persuade him to return to Karakura town. In the last 24 hours, both Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishida Uryu have vanished, and they are Taicho-level Ryoka. We need someone to fill in the gap, and Yamamoto Suteicho has denied my request for Shinigami reinforcement. I understand. I will contact you again when we have located him. Ugh. Ishida Uryu groaned as he awoke. He began to sit up, trying his best to ignore his aching muscles. Blinking, he located his glasses on a bedside table, and he put them on. The first thing he saw were the bandages on his fingers. Bandages? He suddenly remembered his fight with his father. I see. Chusan must have healed me after I passed out. He clenched his right hand into a fist. I barely even touched him. Is this my limit? He took a deep breath and calmed himself. Anger is not useful at this moment, Ishida reminded himself. Now I know where I stand in terms of ability. The next step is to analyze my weaknesses from that fight. Coldly, logically, he began to list them. My fingers began to bleed and weaken after my Quincy bow cut through the gloves I wore. Chusan was able to fire arrows without his second hand, I must work on that. He was also capable of firing far more arrows at once than I can at this time. He was faster than I am with the Hirenkyaku, and his arrows were faster, stronger. Uryu nodded to himself. Speed, quantity and quality of arrows, and the ability to fire the Quincy arrows with only one hand. Those were the skills he displayed, along with his incredible tolerance to continuously drawing spiritual energy. He didn't use a single piece of Quincy equipment. No seal Schneiders, no silver tubes, nothing but his own bow and arrow. Strength and speed will come with experience. If I understood my father's words correctly, he implied we would fight again. But firing with one hand will take practice. Uryu lay back down, resting. First though, I must finish recovering. I doubt my body can handle drawing any significant amount of spiritual energy for some time. In the meantime, he reached into his backpack, which his father had been kind enough to allow Uryu to bring along, and pulled out one of his school texts. He began to stud, feeling rather productive. No. Ishida-san, my Taicho merely wants a status report on your son. Namely, where is he, or lacking that, will he be able to respond to an Arrancar attack in the near future? Matsumoto Ranjaku asked reasonably. And what makes you think I know where my son is? Ishida Ryukin asked, peering over his hands at the two Shinigami in his office. Because you are both Quincy, and while we may be unable to locate Ishida Uryu, only a spiritually adept person would know how to hide another, Rukia responded. We have already checked with Urahara Kisuke in his underground chamber, and he suggested that perhaps Uryu-san had come to you for training. That follows what we know of him. That meddler. He did indeed come to me for training, and he is currently recovering. I am not certain when he will be at full health once again, but have you forgotten? Quincy do not like Shinigami. We do not work with Shinigami. Perhaps your time would be better spent getting Shinigami reinforcements. Hitsugaya Taicho has already attempted just that, with failure. The majority of our forces remain in Soul Society to prevent Aizen's forces from attacking our home, Ranjiku explained. Besides, would you not call it necessary to work with us to protect your own home? Karakura town appears to be Aizen's next target. Should it come to that, I will protect the hospital, Ryukin conceded. But why is Uryu so needed? Kurosaki Ichigo, the resident Shinigami representative here for Karakura town, was taken by Yoruichi-sama for emergency training, Rukia replied. Please note that this was not by our decision, it is something the two of them apparently decided to do. That said, he and Ishida Uryu are the only Taicho-level combatants here that are not under a power limiter, Ranjiku added. Lacking one is bad, lacking both is a disaster waiting to happen. Unless you or Urahara-san take their place in the event of an invasion, Rukia corrected. If Uryu-san needs to recover from training with you, then your help would certainly be welcome. Urahara-san has declined helping unless absolutely necessary. Then I too, will help only when absolutely necessary, Ryukin said with finality. Uryu will return when he is ready. Ranjiku and Rukia glanced at each other, recognizing that they were being dismissed. In tandem, they shunpaed away through an open window. Not good, Ranjiku said to Rukia as they dashed back to report to Toshiro. I don't think we'll be allowed to keep our limiters off. You've got it easy, Rukia, you don't have such a limiter. One of the few good things to happen for Nisama keeping me from being promoted to a seated officer, Rukia replied with a sigh. She looked up, her face determined. We'll just need to prove that we can take care of things until Ichigo and Uryu return. Don't you find Ichigo-san's disappearance a little strange? Ranjiku queried. I don't know him that well, but he seems like he wouldn't just up and disappear without telling anyone. Rukia nodded. Yeah. But he's also not one to turn down advanced training if it could help protect his friends. If I know him, he's probably training himself to the bone under Yoruichi, like Hitsugaya Taicho said. Last time, he achieved Bankai in just 2 days, and had learned Shunpa. I wonder what he'll be able to do after this training. You're right, Ranjiku said, reassured. Rukia was glad at least one of them believed her words. Despite all this, I'm worried. He mentioned that his battle with his inner hollow was only days away. He disappeared right around the time he said he'd have to battle. Could he have lost? She shook her head. No, I can't think about this right now. I've already lost Kaien to a hollow I couldn't protect him from, I won't lose Ichigo too. She looked at the setting sun. Come home soon, Ichigo. Her eyes hardened. Inoue smiled. Hey there, Kenpachi-san. Oh. The incredibly tall Taicho of the 11th Division turned to view his addresser. Hello, Inoue. Is Ichigo with you? He gave a bloodthirsty grin. I'd love to spar with him again. Afraid not, Inoue replied cheerfully. I'm actually on my way heal someone. Yoruichi-sensei said it could take a couple of days to get there. That's too bad, Kenpachi responded. He scrutinized Inoue. You look stronger than before. I am. Inoue replied with a grin. Been training with Kurosaki-kun and Chad and Uryu. Now that's interesting, Kenpachi said, his grin returning. Would you care for a spar? If you've been training with Ichigo, even a little bit, you might just be strong enough to take me on. Sorry, Yoruichi the cat interrupted, but she really does need to go heal Sato Yasutora's grandfather. We won't be back for several days. Nonsense, I'll take her there personally if it means we can spar later, Kenpachi insisted. Yay! Ken-chan gets to fight Big Booby-chan. Yachiru, Kenpachi's extremely childlike Fukutecho, piped up from his shoulder. Hi Yachiru-chan. Inoue greeted. Kenpachi Taicho, don't you have to take care of your squad and toughen them up a bit? Yoruichi argued. Besides, if we were really in a rush, I could take her there faster than you ever could. I'm planning on using this opportunity to train her to discover her own high speed technique. Bah, she's human. Kenpachi pointed out. She can't use Shunpa, and she can't use whatever hollows use. The only way she's going to get faster is by doing it the same way I do, hard physical training and learning to use Ryatsu to strengthen the legs instinctively. He has a point, Yoruichi-sensei, Inoue reluctantly concurred. My powers are a healing bubble, a defensive shield, and a slicing attack. Between those powers, all of my shun Rika is used. She looked up and put a finger to her chin in thought. I suppose I could ride my Santen Keshin if I needed to, but that would mean sacrificing my defense ability. That depends, Yoruichi pounced on the idea. How large can you make your Santen Keshin? Inoue glanced at her in surprise. I've never really thought about it, actually. I've always just made them large enough to cover what they needed. The largest I've ever done is about Kenpachi-san's height, I suppose. The larger they are, the more Ryatsu they take. Why do you ask? I was thinking that if you could make your shield curved, you could protect yourself while flying on it, Yoruichi suggested. Inoue bit her lip. I'll talk to my shun Rika and see what we can do. Kenpachi, I'm honored that you want to fight me, but I'm afraid our match will have to be postponed. Meh, that's fine. Get stronger, girl, I want to fight you the same way I fought Ichigo. He grinned. You Ryoka are getting more and more interesting. Later. He stalked off. Bye, Big Booby-chan. Yachiru waved goodbye. Bye, Yachiru-chan. Afterwards, she turned to Yoruichi. In the meantime, let's get to Chad's grandfather. Santen Keshin. Her golden triangular shield appeared, resting a few inches above the ground. Stepping on it lightly, Inoue tested to see if it could support her weight. When it did so without any apparent difficulty, she got fully on it and sat down. Yoruichi-sensei, would you please lead me to Chad? The cat jumped into Inoue's lap. Sure. With a thought, the shield-turned transportation rose up into the air above the buildings and rushed to the exit from Siriidii. Half an hour later, Inoue began to sway, and the shield flickered. Land! Yoruichi commanded. Inoue quickly did so, stepping off her shield before allowing her fairies to return to their hairpin state. Ooh boy, I'm dizzy, Inoue giggled, sitting down and leaning back against a boulder. You've drained too much Ryatsu to continue flying like that, Yoruichi told her. We shall rest here for the night. Well done, by the way, you've taken us almost halfway there. We're in District 36. That's good. Inoue said absently, her eyes drooping from exhaustion. The goddess of Flash took pity on the girl. Sleep, Orihime-chan. All right. And Inoue dropped off in seconds, her head falling forward towards her chest. The cat blinked once and shook her head. I shall keep watch. Ichigo jumped back from the ajuchas that Kazidor had eaten just a few minutes before. This hollow appeared to be a large human-porcupine blend, and its fighting style involved long-distance attacks, usually throwing the spike-like needles that kept regenerating from its back. Ichigo was having a hard time getting close, and the Getsuga Tensho wasn't fast enough to catch him. At least, not in Shirkai form. Ichigo didn't want to go Bankai, not if he didn't have to. He could sense Sangetsu's agreement, Bankai was overkill, while beating the ajuchas in Shirkai would be a test of skill. Not bad, Ichigo complimented, dodging another set of a dozen spikes. But you're no match for me. Getsuga Tensho. Haven't you learned by now that that's not going to work? The porcupine Ajuchas taunted, nimbly dodging, only to find Zangetsu piercing his head. The Ajuchas disintegrated, its power becoming Kazidor's. Ichigo shook his head, pulling on the cloth from several meters away. The blade practically leapt back into his hand. Man, Kazidor was really onto something when he showed me how useful throwing Zangetsu could be. Indeed, Zangetsu's true spiritual form agreed from nearby. While I do prefer being wielded as a blade instead of as a flail, it is an effective long-distance attack. Especially for high-speed piercing instead of cutting, Ichigo continued with a nod. I prefer the Getsuga Tensho, but it is rather visible, and hiding you behind the Getsuga seems like a powerful strategy. Zangetsu merely nodded. Ichigo, Kazidor de la Luna is growing stronger and faster with every hollow he consumes. For you to win your next battle, you too must grow stronger. Ichigo nodded, but sat down next to a nearby flagpole. We can spar in a few minutes then, partner. In the meantime, tell me a bit more about yourself. I'm curious. Zangetsu gave a rare smile and leapt onto the flagpole, both Ichigo and he staring up in the sky, looking at the blood-red moon. As much as I enjoy being your Zanpakuto, I miss forests, seeing the simple beauty of nature. I don't get to see too much of that back home, Ichigo commented. Comes with living in a suburb, I suppose. I'm not sure I see the appeal. It is difficult to describe, Zangetsu conceded. Perhaps the best way is to simply experience it. Ichigo glanced around, seeing nothing but sideways skyscrapers under the crimson-hued moon. How would I go about adding to the variety here? Maybe put a park or two, or something. Your inner world evolves as you do, Zangetsu said simply, as if that explained it all. And in a way, it did. Ichigo's brows furrowed as he thought heavily. So, because I haven't seen very much of nature, and don't understand the appeal, there are no forests, or lakes, or anything else. But if I began to spend time there, and have it begin to affect my personality, then part of my inner world would change. Correct. Remember, Ichigo, that no one stays the same forever. Change is a very large part of life. Ichigo merely nodded. This was a lesson that he knew well. Change cannot be avoided forever, he added. It is the ability to adapt to change that marks the most successful in any aspect of life. Indeed. They spent several minutes in comfortable silence. Do you enjoy stargazing? Ichigo suddenly asked. Very much. Especially where there are no artificial lights to hide the light of the stars, Zangetsu replied. The view is quite exquisite. Really? I didn't know that. Maybe I'll have try it sometime. I stargaze from the roof of my house, but there are lots of lights, so maybe I'll see if there is a good forest I can stargaze from. A hollow roar disrupted their relaxation, and Ichigo jumped to his feet. Well, looks like Kazidor certainly isn't slacking off. He readied his weapon. Guess I better give it my all too. Kazidor grinned as he faced off against another Ajuchas. He'd taken several minutes to relax after feeling his latest evolution to Ajuchas. Funnily enough, simply eating an Ajuchas was enough to transform, instead of eating dozens of Jillian. Kazidor liked it. More efficient. Maybe I will get to Vasto Lord in this single session of control. Becoming an Ajuchas had created quite a significant increase to his power, and that was a feeling the Arankar liked very much. Only one part of Kazidor had changed in his pre-resurrection state, and that was his mask. Before, a red-on-white patterned mask had covered only the top left part of Kazidor's face, the part between his hairline and his eyebrow. Now, the mask had changed, and covered his entire forehead, with what looked like two jagged crimson hooks facing each other on a white background. I wonder what my resurrection mask looks like. Hell, I wonder how my resurrection has changed. Just a minute ago, Kazidor had jumped down and taken a bite out of an Ajuchas before slaying it with Zangetsu. He was a bit disappointed, he'd expected the Ajuchas to at least put up a decent fight. Oh well. At least this other guy's looks like he's ready to go. Who the hell are you, the Ajuchas? This one looking remarkably like an enormous 16-legged spider, demanded. You're obviously an Arankar, so why aren't you up in Las Noches with Aizen-sama? The name's Kazidor. He grinned. And your name, is food. Show me what you've got. And that's that in terms of the chapter. Yes, it is a bit short, but I felt there was plenty to go on in here. Some fighting, some character development. That said, let me go over a couple of things. Yes, Kazidor is now an Ajuchas. Does anyone honestly think that's too fast? To go from Jillian in one chapter, to Ajuchas in another? Would you expect any less from Ichigo's alternate personality? I mean, seriously, Ichigo has gone from unseated officer level, when Rukia gave her powers to him, to Fukutecho level, during and after fighting Renji, to Taicho level, see Ichigo vs Byakuya Bankai fight, in less time than it takes for a nobody to finish through Shinigami Academy. To compare against Hollow Evolution, the equivalent is going from a newborn Hollow to Jillian to Ajuchas. Given that Kazidor has Ichigo's power at his disposal, plus his own not inconsiderable power, plus their skills at wielding Zangetsu, I figure it had to happen pretty quick. Don't worry though, he won't get to Vasto Lord yet. In regards to Inoue flying with her Santen Keshin, it's something I randomly thought of while writing this chapter, and it makes a level of sense once you think about it. She can reject external forces. The stronger the force, the more Reiatsu it takes. I can also think of no reason why the fairies can't fly while maintaining the shield. I already had her ride the shield down to land softly once, and even outright mentioned rejecting gravity. This happened in chapter, so I can't think of a good reason she can't ride the Santen Keshin where she needs to go. The only problem could be her Reiatsu reserves, unlike Ichigo, who has monstrous reserves and can stand on air to his heart's content, or Ishida, who can replenish himself using the environment's energy from using Hirenkyaku, or even Chad, whose reserves must have grown quite large as well during his training to fire his energy blast at will. She has a relatively small pool of Reiatsu, and I feel that the shield would take more energy to constantly use than the airwalking technique. So she can't use it for long, hence why she couldn't go for more than half an hour. I was happy to have an opportunity for more Zangetsu Ichigo bonding time. As for Zangetsu preferring nature, that's actually canon. Take a look at his Bleach wiki article if you don't believe me. I figured that stargazing was a logical step, and something both of them enjoyed. I have seen, in anime, Ichigo sitting on the roof, looking at the stars. Throw in Zangetsu's own name, Cutting Moon, and I figured that enjoying watching the heavens was plausible. Kenpachi fighting Inoue? Now that would be an interesting match. He slashes. She blocks. He keeps striking the shield, she keeps blocking, but uses Koten Zanshuan to strike Kenpachi from the side. Only concern would be Inoue collapsing from Kenpachi's force of Reiatsu, being so much more intense than her own. But I figured Kenpachi's interest in Inoue was plausible, since Inoue admitted she trained with Ichigo, the only person to tie against him without his eye patch. Next, Yachiru's nickname for Inoue. That's also canon, along with Squishy. Please do keep in mind that her father figure is Kenpachi, and he is hardly a good role model in regards to restraint. Plus, she is only a child. Finally, Kazidor's new mask. This is actually a fragment of his new hollow forms mask, the one that managed to kick Ulquiorra's, but after the Arankar blew a hole in his chest with his instantaneous zero in his Resurrection, Segunda Etapa form. Yes, I've heard it described as an open-ended heart before, but you kinda need the entire mask to see that. That said, I'm still trying to figure out what his Resurrection form would be in that case. A hint of what's to come, I'm considering having Ichigo's mask usage come in stages, similar to his sword. I mean, there are stages for a Zanpakuto. Default, aka sealed, Shurkai and Bankai. Ichigo's default is Shurkai. Why should the mask be different? So, it'd have the Jillian mask, bone white on the right, red tattoo-like markings on the left, and then when that's not enough, a Jucha's mask, the one where he kicks Ulquiorra's butt in, and eventually, Vasto Lord Mask, undecided how that'll look. Not sure yet, just something I'm considering. I might throw that idea completely out the window and instead focus on other thoughts, like, do I want Ichigo to be able to use Resurrection? How would he do so? Is that too overdone? Anyway, I've never seen a mask in stages idea, so I'm looking for opinions on this. Chapter 11, Perspective. Inoue Orihime groggily woke up in an uncomfortable position. She blinked, seeing the earth practically flying before her eyes. The memories came back to her then. Oh, right, going to go save Chad's grandfather. Ah, you're awake, Yoruichi greeted from behind Inoue, who suddenly realized that she was being carried over the woman's shoulder. They came to a stop so Yoruichi could set the busty human down. Where are we? Inoue asked after being set down. Right now. We should be in District 62, though we're asleep for quite some time, Yoruichi responded. At dawn, I changed from my cat form into my human form and began to carry you here. Remember, our target is District 80. Inoue nodded her understanding. Shall I start to fly us again? Hell no. Yoruichi said sharply. You're still recovering from Ryatsu depletion, and we need to pick up some food for us. Inoue looked down. Right, she whispered. The cat turned human immediately realized she had sounded a bit harsh. Listen, Orihime, you've done nothing wrong, we needed to see how far you could go using your shield for flying, and we found out. But it's never a good idea to use a large amount of Ryatsu immediately afterwards, and we do need to eat to regain our strength, she explained. Inoue nodded. Right, she said again, this time a bit more cheerfully. Alright then, let's go to the nearest village. It should be in this direction, Yoruichi mused, shifting into her cat form and leading the way. Kazidor frowned as he sat down, leaning against a nearby quartz tree within Minos forest. These Ajuchas are weak, he muttered. I haven't needed to even use Sonido, and my Zero is like a one-hit kill. He glanced down at himself. None of them can even cut me when I let them. Is this how Kenpachi feels all the time? Surrounded by weaklings who cannot even focus their intent enough to cut through my hero? He sighed. If this keeps up, I might as well let Ichigo take over again. At least in our inner world, I can fight Ichigo, and he always puts up a great fight. He shook his head. The last few times Kazidor had attempted to garner the location of a Vasto Lord to fight, his opponents had known nothing, or at the very least not divulged any information. Wait a minute. Kazidor jumped to his feet. That Ishido guy said the Vasto Lord and stronger Ajuchas were above Minos forest, living on the surface. He looked up. Only question is, how do I get up there? Maybe if I use a Getsuga Tensho and try to slice my way to the surface? I wouldn't recommend trying that, Ichigo warned. We have no idea how thick the barrier is. We know it's not particularly thin, as hollows come in all sizes, and we haven't seen or felt a single tremor come through. Who knows? It could be miles thick. Kazidor frowned again. You've got a point. Perhaps Ishido knows. Good idea, but how are you going to find him, Baka? Minos forest is huge, and we already saw that he's incredibly skilled at Shunpa. He could be anywhere, even places we've already looked. He's gotta have a place to stay to rest, Kazidor reasoned. He is a Shinigami, and unlike hollows, Shinigami need to rest and eat to regain their strength. Point, Ichigo conceded. Unless he has more than one of them, which would make sense if the hollows have figured that out. Do you have a better idea? The hollow challenged. No. With a smug smirk, Kazidor used Sonido to disappear in a random direction, reaching out with his spiritual sense to find another Ajuchas to interrogate. Aizen peered over his interlocked fingers at his Quinta and Sexta Espada. So, Kurosaki Ichigo has become a hollow? A powerful, fully transformed Arrancar no less. Yes, Aizen-sama, Nitra replied. Unless he has a twin or something. But he has no memories of his former life. None that we could tell, Aizen-sama, Grimmjow answered. He didn't remember me at all. And the mask fragment was definitely from the one when Kurosaki fought me, so I'm positive that it's him. This could be the break I have been waiting for, Aizen mused. That's one less Taicho-class Shinigami blocking the way to Karakura town. He smiled. No, not yet. Aizen-sama. I don't believe he has lost all of his memories for good, the master manipulator began. Or perhaps Urahara Kisuke is trying to plant a spy in our midst. I believe a test is in order. Grimmjow, Nitra, you are dismissed. Ulquiorra. Grimmjow and Nitra both bowed lightly to Aizen before slowly leaving, wanting to listen. The Quarta Espada walked in expressionlessly, not the least bit perturbed at having been caught listening by his master. Yes, Aizen-sama. I have a new assignment for you. Kidnap at least one of Kurosaki Ichigo's friends, and bring him or her here to Las Noches. Aizen's smile grew slightly. Perhaps the woman, or the weakling from your memories, the one with the strange arm. I leave the method to you. I hear and obey, Aizen-sama. Ulquiorra bowed and walked from the room. Che, Grimmjow scoffed under his breath as Ulquiorra passed him. Apathetic bstrd. Perhaps, Ulquiorra agreed at a normal volume in his emotionless tone. But you will never surpass my power, no matter how hard you strive. Grimmjow growled, but knew better than to try to fight Ulquiorra this close to Aizen. One day I will prove you wrong. And that day is coming, I swear it. Ishida Uryu pushed his glasses up his nose as he set his books inside his backpack. There was no more pain when he moved, and if his intuition was correct, then he was fully healed. Getting up from the hospital bed experimentally, Uryu nodded to himself. He began to unwrap the bandages from his arms and hands. While the skin felt a little tender, there was hardly a scar on his body from where he'd been wounded. Even his fingers looked as though he hadn't abused them in that fight 2 days ago. Excellent, the Quincy murmured, continuing to unwrap the bandages around his legs, to find much the same condition as on his arms, tender to touch, but healed enough for the moment. He pulled on his school pants and looked at himself in a nearby mirror by a sink. After a few moments' consideration, he left the bandages around his abdomen and pulled on his shirt. Time to train. Uryu confidently made his way to the training room where he and his father had had their fight. He was proud that he had at least managed to wound his father, but Uryu refused to let his growth end there. Letting his Quincy cross fall from his hand so it hung from his wrist, Uryu summoned his Quincy bow in his right hand. Keeping his dominant left hand at his side, he aimed the bow in a random direction and focused his mental energies, gathering more Reiatsu. It was easy enough to form an arrow, but keeping it aloft against the bowstring was difficult without using his left hand to hold it there. A bead of sweat trickled down Uryu's forehead as his focus was split, trying to maintain the bow, the arrow, keeping the arrow aloft, and pulling it back against the bowstring. The arrow inched back slowly. It took a few strain-filled minutes, but the arrow was finally in position. With a thought, Uryu released the arrow. The arrow flew true, but it was not as strong, nor as fast as arrows he could fire when using both hands. Uryu frowned. My father must have truly impressive mental discipline to fire so many powerful arrows at one time with only one hand. As much as he hated to, Uryu was growing to respect the man's power, even if he didn't respect his father as a person. Uryu, in his concentrated focus on his task, had no idea that Ishida Ryukin was watching from behind a corner, observing Uryu's progress. Ryukin shook his head, smothering the smile that threatened to form on his face. Impressive, Uryu. It took me years of training under your grandfather to progress to the point where I could fire arrows one-handed. Yet after only one training session, you've already grasped the concepts. Perhaps you do deserve that title of genius. Once more, Uryu raised his bow and summoned an arrow. This is similar to the Sanrei glove training, he murmured to himself. The Sanrei glove trained my focus and power to be able to absorb and shape Reiatsu despite the glove producing an artificial repellent to Reiatsu. This one-handed firing will train my focus further. Perhaps when I have mastered it, I will be able to use one hand to fire arrows, and one to use the Quincy silver tubes in tandem. Uryu narrowed his eyes in concentration as he slowly managed to pull back the arrow using only his power. I refuse to be left behind. Not by Kurosaki, not by Tusan, not by anyone. He released another arrow and immediately began again. Flashes of memories ran through Yuryu's head, Kurosaki defeating that Minos Grande shortly after gaining his powers, Kurosaki's Bankai, his hollow mask granting that insane level of power, Kurosaki fighting head-to-head with that incredibly fast Espada, the bitter acknowledgement that Kurosaki was stronger than he was. More flashes, from much longer ago, those disappointed, stern looks from his father, his grandfather dying before his very eyes. I will prove my worth, Uryu whispered to himself as he struggled to pull back the arrow. That I promise, on my Quincy pride. He's awake. There was a veritable stampede as everyone in the farmhouse rushed to see the newly awakened Oscar Joaquin de la Rosa. They looked at the recovering man, smiling to see him alert. Welcome back, old man. My children, Oscar murmured with a smile. I am glad to have returned, but I know not how it happened. Please, someone, tell me what has happened since I was taken. Those BSTRDS were going to execute you right in front of us, in this building we have worked so hard together in, Lanes told him, his voice as tight as his fists. But a man named Sato Yasutora heard of this and came to warn and help us. He claims to be your grandson. Oscar's eyes widened visibly. Yasutora. My boy, is that you? The crowd of men and children parted, allowing Chad to pass. He'd been in the back, nervous with anticipation. Abuelo. Oscar smiled. Yasutora, it is you. I am glad to see you again. Come give me a hug. A lone tear of happiness trailed its way down Chad's face from his right eye as he kneeled by the bed and hugged his abuelo. I have missed you, abuelo. I have missed you too, my boy. You've certainly grown into a veritable giant. Oscar replied as he got a good look at him. How did you find me? Did you die? No, abuelo, I still live, Chad answered. So much has happened since you left the living world. It is a long story. I eagerly await your telling, the old, now armless man said with a smile. I see we've grown in number during my time away. I'm proud of you all, thank you for continuing my dream. One day, we'll make this district the most peaceful in all of Seoul society. The men all cheered. We're going to go tend the fields now, Oscar. We'll be back soon, one of the men told him informatively before they filed out. Chad remained behind. They remained quiet for several moments. How are you doing, abuelo? Chad asked, looking guiltily at where his grandfather's arms should have been. Oscar caught where his grandson was gazing. I won't deny, losing my arms is a blow to my pride, he said softly, and I fear becoming a burden to the people I have tried so hard to protect. Chad smiled. A friend of mine is coming to restore your arms. You'll have them back soon. Oscar looked shocked. It sounds like you truly do have much to tell. Chad nodded. The story begins shortly after your death in the living world. I moved back to Japan. Some time later, Chad finished telling the tale of how he'd become friends with Ichigo, how he had awakened the latent powers in his right arm, and their rescue of Kachiki Rukia. He described the tight-knit group that had formed around Ichigo, Ishida, Inoue, and himself, and the revelation of finding his powers were similar to a hollow's. Chad related his insecurities of suddenly being unable to uphold the vow he and Ichigo had made to each other, to fight for each other, to watch each other's backs. He explained how Urahara had pointed out that it was likely that Oscar was in Seoul society somewhere, and Chad finished with his search for his abuelo. After some time searching with Yoruichi-sensei, we found clues pointing towards the North 80th District, and we came straight away, keeping our ears to the ground for more information. After arriving, I found out from one of the local gangs that you were being held hostage, and I rushed to save you, only to find that you had already been removed from the prison to be executed, Chad revealed. A boy held in prison there told me where to find this place, so I rescued him from there and came straight here, with time to spare. He fell silent. There is more, Oscar said after a moment, observing Chad's posture. Something painful. There is. Chad swallowed. When they came to execute you, and I saw that you had been tortured, that your arms had been taken from you, I snapped. I showed you my right arm, el brazo derecho del gigante. My left arm also transformed. He closed his eyes and activated his left arm. El brazo izquierda, del diablo. Oscar leaned back against the bed frame in surprise. Of the devil? He queried. Why that name? While my right arm draws power from my will to defend, my left comes from my will to attack. Chad's eyes shut tightly beneath his long shaggy hair, fearing his abuelo's response to what he was about to say, but unable to keep from saying it. In my rage, I transformed my arm for the first time. And I killed everyone but 3 Shinigami, in wrathful vengeance of the injustice they had inflicted upon you. And then I told them to run, to fear always that I would come for them, to live their lives in terror that I would come to exact my revenge. I broke my vow of never raising my fists for anything but defense of others. Chad looked up, hot tears of shame trailing down his cheeks as he deactivated his arm. Yasutora. I gained the power I was looking for, but at the cost of what? My humanity? My conscience? I have betrayed you, abuelo. You spent so long teaching me to use these strong arms of mine to protect others, as you protected me from the beating I so rightly deserved all those years ago. But here, I have become a killer. Chad released a choked sob. I wanted to kill them, I felt satisfaction when I did. What does that make me? It makes you human. What? Chad gasped. To his surprise, Oscar was looking at him with kind eyes. It is human to feel strongly for those you care for, Yasutora. You saw them and saw people who had inflicted a great deal of suffering purposely and willfully on others. More than that, you saw someone who you respected and loved brought to the verge of death. It is natural to desire revenge, and to take it when your emotions were at their darkest. But look at how you are now, feeling sorrow for taking lives. You are no monster, no devil. You are my boy, Sato Yasutora. Seeing his grandson's self-doubt still lingering, Oscar decided to try a different tact. This Kurosaki Ichigo, if his family had been taken by Aizen's forces, and tortured to demoralize him, how would he react? Knowing that his abuelo was trying to teach him once more, Chad thought hard about the scenario. I think he would snap, he finally said. Ichigo would unleash his full power and kill them all in a dark rage, or die trying. Oscar nodded. And knowing that your best friend, your comrade in arms, your nakama would have done the same thing you did, can you honestly say that such actions are inhuman? Chad shook his head negatively. I thought not. I too, have killed someone, the old man admitted quietly. What? I was young, Oscar recalled. Cocky, foolish. But strong, very strong. Much like you were once, my boy. I was part of a gang, and we took pride in our petty thefts, our muggings. But then something happened, and everything spiraled out of control. His eyes glazed over, reliving the event. We just managed to rob a small-time store when suddenly my mask was ripped off from behind me and I was punched from behind. The owner of the store had anticipated the robbery and had been lying in wait. My parents didn't know anything of my activities, and I was suddenly afraid of what would happen if the owner revealed my identity to the police. He closed his eyes. I am not proud of what happened next. As if thinking along the same lines, 2 other gang members pounced him and held him against a wall. Our leader handed me a gun. And I killed that innocent man, fear overwhelming me. What happened next? Chad asked quietly. I had nightmares for weeks. On some days I thought of turning myself into the police. Others I tried to rationalize killing him, tried to ease my guilt, with failure. We never told a soul, but I quit the gang not long later. I was always seeing the man's face everywhere I looked, my hands never felt clean, I couldn't take any more. A couple of months later, I saved a young child from being run over by a car, and I felt a little better. I realized then the true purpose of strength is not to establish one's dominance, but to protect. Oscar shook his head to clear it of old memories. I am very proud of how you have grown, Yasutora. Oscar smiled. You have become a man strong not only in body, but in character. Your left arm, el brazo izquierdo del diablo, you said it was made from your will to attack. Something you must understand, Yasutora, is that protection is not made up solely of defense. No matter how strong the shield is, without eliminating the threat the shield will crumble. Chad recognized the argument from when Inoue had had her own troubles accepting the will to hurt others, and scolded himself for not remembering it. He hugged his grandfather again. Thank you, abuelo. Both men could tell that Chad was thanking Oscar for many things in that simple sentence, but neither said anything more. A knock on the door interrupted the two of them. Chad opened it, to find Inoue and Yoruichi. You arrived quickly, he said in surprise. Abuelo, this is Inoue Orihime, she's here to heal your arms. It's a pleasure to meet a beauty such as this, Oscar said with a grandfatherly smile. Please, call me Oscar. Inoue smiled back. You ready? At the nod, she brought her hands to her hairpins. Soten kiss hun. Mere minutes later, Oscar stared in wonder as he stretched his arms. They felt as strong or stronger than when he'd lost them. That is truly an amazing power, he murmured in awe. Never stop reaching for the sky, young lady, you have the potential to do much. Inoue blushed prettily. Thank you, Oscar. No, thank you, Inoue, Chad said earnestly, going so far as to bow lightly in her direction. Chad. There's no need to bow to me. Inoue protested, flustered. Chad rose and smiled at her. Chad, it is time, you must return to the living world, Yoruichi suddenly said. I got a status update while I was there, Ichigo's gone missing and Uryu's training with his father. You have gained the power you sought for, it is time to protect your town with it. The Onamitsukido are coming to fetch you. Go, my boy. Your friends need you, Oscar ordered gently. I'll be here next time you come around. Chad smiled. I will see you soon, I hope. I'm sure you will. With that, Chad, Inoue and Yoruichi headed out. Chad, we must make haste back to Karakura, Yoruichi emphasized. Aizen could attack at any time, now that Uryu and Ichigo are not available for combat. I will carry Orihime-chan, follow me as fast as you can. Before Orihime could voice a complaint, Yoruichi had suddenly picked her up and dashed off with godlike speed, proving once again that she deserved her title as the goddess of Flash. Chad frowned, transforming both of his arms and began using Paso del Viento. To his satisfaction, he was much faster than when he'd only used El Brazo Diresh del Gigante. He was not as fast as Yoruichi, but the Shunpa master slowed her pace enough for Chad to keep up. We'll arrive at the Siriidii in a couple of hours at this rate, Yoruichi called out as they passed a district. Think you can keep up the pace? It shouldn't be a problem, Chad replied honestly. With this second arm, I feel like my power has grown enormously. Good, I feel you'll need that power soon. Kazidor was unsurprised when he saw Ishida suddenly appear in front of him in an impressive display of Shunpa. What is it you want? Ishida asked tonelessly. I want out of Minos forest. Show me how to reach the surface, Kazidor requested. Very well. Ishida Shunpaed away, and Kazidor followed using Sonido. Eventually they came to a stop near a tall cliff. Ishida pointed at a small, difficult-to-see tunnel high up the cliff and to the left. The way to the surface is there, you may find your way blocked by Ajuchas, however. Ask him if he wants to come with us, Ichigo suggested. It's always useful to have an ally. Kazidor thought about it for a few seconds. Then he gave a mental shrug. Oi, Ishida. Care to join me? You might grow even stronger up there. No. I will remain down here. I seek to reduce the number of hollows that travel to the living world, and the most common of them are simple hollows and Jillians, Ishida explained shortly. Kazidor shrugged. Alright, if that's your thing. Thanks for showing me the way out. He sonidoed up and into the tunnel before anyone had a chance to stop him. Time to chow down on the more powerful Ajuchas, and maybe a Vasto Lord. Be careful, Kazidor. Vasto Lord are supposed to be even stronger than Taicho-class Shinigami, Ichigo cautioned. Right. The Arrancar found himself at the end of the tunnel quickly enough, and looked around. Endless sands, as far as the eye could see, except in one direction. In that direction was a palace-like structure. I take it that's Las Noches. Kazidor murmured. It looks pretty far away, must be enormous. It is. Kazidor blinked, before instinctually blocking a strike from his side with Zangetsu. His opponent appeared to be quite similar to a bear, except the claws were much sharper, and the fur looked like it was made of needles. Despite having been caught unawares, Kazidor grinned. You're stronger than those idiots in Minos Forest. Of course I am, the bear roared, firing a patch of needles from his chest at Kazidor's face, forcing the Arrancar to dodge. Sate my hunger, you wannabe. I think not, Kazidor said with a smirk, using Sonido to appear behind the Ajuchas and slicing into and through the bear's left shoulder, cutting off the arm. Snatching it up, he took a bite from a non-needle-coated part and then killed the bear-like hollow before it could attack. He paused, passing judgment on the hollow's strength. Better, Kazidor finally determined. But not strong enough, and still ruled by hunger. Must not have been an Ajuchas long. Indeed, Ichigo agreed, having dispatched the Ajuchas within their inner world easily with a well-placed Getsuga Tensho. That one was all strength and no speed. So, Kazidor, pick a direction. Kazidor frowned. Well, we know what's in the direction of Las Noches. Aizen's Arrancar, made up of Ajuchas, perhaps a Vasto Lord or two. Some of Aizen's servants, I imagine. Yeah, Ichigo agreed. We could go that way and start taking some of those servants out, but that would draw Aizen's attention back to us. Question is the benefit of killing and eating those servants worth the risk? Maybe. Hold on. Kazidor blinked. Not too far off, to his right, he could see what appeared to be a child being chased by 3 hollows. What the hell? He used Sonido to dash over and check it out. Quickly noticing a hollow mask remnant on the child, he realized. A child Arrancar, he asked incredulously. Who are you? The thin, purple hollow with white body armor, gloves, and insect-like head, complete with mandibles, demanded. Cazador de la Luna, Cazador greeted. I don't suppose you guys are with Aizen. His words visibly brought all 4 hollows in front of him into a state of terror. Nell-sama, be ready to run, don't you know, the large one with black polka dots and an enormous tiki mask whispered to the young Arrancar. We'll distract him and meet up with you later. Yeah, the first one agreed. We'll handle this Espada. Cazador laughed aloud. I'm no Espada, he corrected with a manic grin. Just an Arrancar that doesn't like Aizen. See, I'm not even wearing that dmed white outfit. Tell me, who are you? All 4 hollows, including the childlike Arrancar, sighed in relief. I'm Pesh, the purple one introduced. The polka-dotted one is Dandachaka, and our master here is Nell Tusama. The big guy here is Bawabua. The enormous blind-looking sandworm seemed to smile and nod at its name, making incoherent noises that seemed to indicate a nice to meet you. Cazador nodded. How did Nell here get chibi-sized? He asked curiously. I thought all Arrancar had adult bodies. Yeah, how did Nell get like this? The green-haired Arrancar asked in a childish voice. Nell was quite small, with jaw-length hair and a crimson line that stretched from one side of her face to the other under her eyes. Nell's hollow mask remnant was the front part of a skull, but it was on the top of her head, worn akin to a hat. There was also a long scar between her eyes and reaching up to where the hollow mask remnant was cracked. The crack was quite long, and it appeared as though some of the mask's teeth had been forcibly broken. Kazidor found himself curious about it. What happens to an Arrancar if his mask remnant is further damaged? Maybe that's the reason Nell turned into a child. Ichigo theorized. We know that removing some of the mask allows hollows to acquire Shinigami powers by becoming Arrancar, and the Arrancar's hollow powers are stored in a Zanpakuto. Perhaps taking too much of the mask off results in losing too much hollow power to sustain one's previous form. Well, it's safe to assume that Nell was transformed through the Hueco, Kazidor pointed out, watching in mild amusement as Dondochaka and Pesh tried to placate a stubborn Nell without giving away her history. Perhaps the mask was damaged after, and Aizen put a Kido on her to keep her this way as an experiment. To see if the Arrancar could acquire more Shinigami power if the mask was taken off further. Feasible, Ichigo allowed. So, I see you. Don't want her to know about who or what she was before she was transformed, Kazidor finally observed. Why is that? Maybe Nell will stop bugging you if you tell her why. Pesh bowed his head, reluctantly answering. Nell-sama, before you became the child you are now, you were a soul who desired for peace and goodwill, but were forced to fight, bringing you sorrow. We tried to keep your past from you so your memories would not return, so you would not be forced to fight again, don't you know, Dondochaka explained. Nell was an Espada once, wasn't Nell? The Arrancar asked quietly, her lisp making itself known. They spent several moments in silence. Yes, Pesh finally confirmed. You were betrayed and backstabbed by two Arrancar, one of them an Espada of lower rank. They broke your mask further, and you transformed into the Nell you are today. Then Aizen and all of the Espada left you for dead. Please, don't ask any more, Dondochaka pleaded. We kept your past from you to protect you, don't you know? But how's Nell supposed to protect her friends? Nell insisted. Nell wants to keep her friends safe too. Ichigo felt for her, they seemed to have the same wish to grow stronger, not for themselves, but for their precious friends. Kazidor didn't quite understand, he sought power for himself, to become the strongest. However, he had come to respect Ichigo, who had grown as strong as he had so far in his motivation to protect. I dunno about you, but I think it's rather stupid to keep her weak like this. Kazidor looked up as he stated his opinion. The Espada are growing stronger and Aizen won't be happy till he has everything. He'll kill or subjugate you if you're not strong enough, and then look how happy you'll all be. Nell shouldn't have to fight. Pesh insisted, the yellow eyes behind the mask narrowing angrily at the newcomer. Maybe, but isn't that her choice to make? Kazidor pointed out easily, not worried about the Ryatsu Pesh was leaking. He's not strong enough to give me too much trouble. Just because you have power doesn't mean you have to fight, but it certainly makes it easier to survive if someone brings the fight to you. And it sounds like if you tried, she'd recall her power quickly enough. Aren't you happy this way, though? Pesh asked Nell desperately. The former Espada smiled at her friend. Nell's viewy happy with her friends. But if Nell was an Espada, then Nell must have enemies. She looked down and used her toe to draw circles in the sand of Hueco Mundo. Nell has to go up sometime. Both Dondochaka and Pesh looked down at this. Alright, Nell-sama. We will help you remember who you once were, Dondochaka relented. Your full name, is Nellio II Oderschwank, former Espada trace, Pesh revealed. Kazidor and Ichigo had the same bug-eyed expression upon hearing that. Former Espada trace. Ichigo exclaimed, sputtering. Sweet Kami above. No kidding, Ichigo's hollow agreed dumbly. This brat, used to be stronger than me. But her Reiatsu level is so low. So much lost power, for a mere crack in the mask. Note to self, never, ever let my mask be damaged. Nell's reaction was a bit louder. Wahaoeoet. I should have stayed in Soul Society and done the DMN paperwork. Histigaya Toshiro sighed. Suddenly, the interdimensional communication device they'd built rang. Toshiro quickly answered, looking at the large two-way viewing monitor. Yamamoto Suteicho. Hitsugaya Taicho, the wizened commander greeted formally. I have some news that I felt you may be interested in. Yes, Suteicho. I recognize that it is difficult to be away from Soul Society at this time, and even more so as I have denied your request for reinforcements to compensate for the disappearance of substitute Shinigami Kurosaki Ichigo and the Quincy, Ishida Uryu, Yamamoto began. However, this may lighten your spirit somewhat. Hinamori Momofuku Teicho has awoken, and would like to speak to you. He stepped away from the monitor and allowed the image of a slightly ill-looking girl to step forward. The girl was about 5 feet 3 inches tall, with her black hair pulled into a small bun, although she let some hair frame her face on either side. Her eyes were kind and soft, looking as though she deserved to be a healer instead of a fighter. Momo. Toshiro thought in surprise. Shouldn't you be in bed? You don't look like you've fully recovered yet. Momo smiled weakly. Hitsugaya Taicho, I'm almost completely better. I've been asleep for a while. That you have, Toshiro conceded, his memory flashing to checking up on his childhood friend as she lay in a coma from Aizen's sudden betrayal. He felt another flash of anger at the traitor before brutally quashing the emotion. I wanted to apologize, Momo said quietly. I shouldn't have attacked you that night, and I should have listened to you. You were right, and I wasn't thinking clearly. Toshiro looked slightly away to his left, trying not to show his embarrassment. Don't worry about it, it doesn't bother me. It was a trying time for all of us. The girl smiled, this time a bit more genuinely. Thank you for accepting my apology, Hitsugaya Taicho. While Toshiro tried his best to look cold and aloof, his eyes still betrayed a hint of concern to his longtime friend. You should get back to bed now, if that's all you needed to say, Hinamori Fukuteicho. The way you look now makes you look like a little kid. You need to get more rest if you want to grow older. Momo snorted. You shouldn't be talking, Hitsugaya-kun. It's Hitsugaya Taicho, Toshiro reminded her softly, trying to gently remind her that the Suteicho was still in the vicinity, and it was best to keep to formalities for the moment. That seemed to remind her of something else, however. Hitsugaya Taicho, are you going to fight Aizen Taicho? Momo asked quietly. If it comes to that, yes, Toshiro answered honestly. Hinamori Fukuteicho, Aizen betrayed us. Everything we have seems to indicate that he was the leader of the rebellion, and I doubt he's going to stay in Hueco Mundo. That can't be. Momo exclaimed, her eyes watering as she shook her head in rejection of the idea. Not Aizen Taicho. Toshiro's eyes softened a little. I need to get through to her. The Aizen we knew is dead, or never existed to start. Hinamori. I've gotten more information since I arrived here in the living world. I've heard some things about what he did over 100 years ago, long before Ichimaru Jin or Tosen Kaien became Taicho. I don't think either of us ever knew the real Aizen, he finished quietly. What did he do? Momo asked, fearing the answer. He experimented in giving several Shinigami forbidden hollow powers, and then framed another Shinigami. Due to Aizen's actions, they were all to be executed, but they managed to escape. Aizen was never suspected. Momo's eyes hardened. Who told you such dreadful lies? They are not lies, the hard voice of Yamamoto interrupted as he reappeared behind Momo. It is a point of shame that we were fooled by Aizen's deception, and we attempted to execute Urahara Kisuke, Taicho of the 12th Division and founder of the Technology Bureau. Urahara managed to escape to the living world with the aid of Shihoin Yoruichi, and made himself untraceable using a modification of a recently invented jigai. The Shinigami who acquired the forbidden hollow powers also escaped. Yamamoto's head bowed slightly, the closest he would come to expressing sorrow. We lost many strong Shinigami that day, and Urahara has rejected my invitation to rejoin our ranks. Momo's eyes were wide. But, why? Maybe Aizen had a good reason. If so, he should have come to me, Yamamoto said firmly. He did not, and therefore should have been executed 100 years ago. Hinamori Fukatecho, return to your quarters and rest. That is an order. Momo's posture slumped in defeat. Yes, Sutecho. She left quickly. Yamamoto Sutecho, you're in communication with Urahara-san? Toshiro asked, slightly surprised by the development. He'd always seen Yamamoto as a die-hard traditionalist, and not sending a squad to acquire and imprison Urahara was rather unusual. All rogue Shinigami were captured by the 2nd Division, and Toshiro knew that Soifun held no love for the ex-Daicho, though he was unclear on the details. Indeed. The reason I have not sent you any more forces, Hitsugaya Taicho, is to lure Aizen to the living world. Urahara-san is now collaborating with us for a special project I commissioned, that will allow all of the Taicho and Fukatecho to fight at their full power in the living world without interfering with the humans there, Yamamoto revealed. We shall face Aizen's forces in the final battle there. What about the Siriidii then? Toshiro inquired with a frown. If all of us are going to be in the living world, what would keep them from infiltrating Siriidii? If they are after the king's key like we suspect, then it would not be prudent to leave the original unguarded. Of course. The question of who will stay and who will fight in Karakura is one that is still being debated, but Aizen will die in this battle, even if I have to unleash my Bankai to do it, Yamamoto uttered darkly, opening his eyes beyond the slits he normally kept them at. Toshiro couldn't repress a shiver of unbridled fear. He'd seen Yamamoto's Shirkai a couple of times over the years, and that was scary enough. As an ice-type Zanpakuto wielder, the phrase, reduce all creation to ash, Ryujin Jaka, had given him nightmares the night he'd seen it. That much fire and raw heat could remove almost all moisture from the air very quickly, rendering Toshiro's own Bankai almost completely helpless. Yamamoto's Bankai must be downright terrifying. Yamamoto's eyes narrowed again to their usual slits and he continued normally. Soifun Taicho has met with Shihoin Yoruichi and 2 of the Ryoka. Curiously, Kurosaki Ichigo was not among them. Do you have an explanation for this, Hitsugaya Taicho? Toshiro looked directly into Yamamoto's face through the viewing screen. I cannot know for sure, he lied coolly without hesitation, but is it not possible that Yoruichi-sama set Kurosaki a task to complete and was training the other 2 Ryoka in the meantime? Nevertheless, I will consult with Urahara-san and see if he is hiding the truth. Yamamoto nodded. Good. The Ryoka will be arriving in the living world shortly. Do you have anything else to report? Hitsugaya nodded. Now that Kurosaki is gone, fewer and fewer hollows appear by the day. I suspect that Kurosaki's lack of proper control over his Ryatsu is to blame, and propose that he receive additional training to rectify that weakness when prudent. Denied, Yamamoto immediately responded. Kurosaki is strong enough to defeat mid-level Taicho as it is, and has no real tie to Soul Society. We have already made ourselves potential enemies by attempting to execute Kuchiki Rukia. While Aizen's voice acted for the Central 46 in that instance, giving Shinigami powers to a human is still against our laws. Kurosaki refused to abide by those laws, and inspired many of my own forces to rebel. Though it was a good thing that he did in this instance, if Kurosaki grows too strong, he could become a threat as large if not larger than Aizen. I suspect that several of my own Shinigami would defect and join him in that event, which would cause a civil war far more disastrous than our current war. You're not wrong, Toshiro thought to himself. I believe I understand, Sutecho, but why have you not taken action against Yoruichi-sama if that is the case? She is believed to be training Kurosaki, after all. Shihoin Yoruichi does have positive ties to Soul Society, and maintains friendly camaraderie with Soifun Taicho. It is my intent that Yoruichi instill respect and trust for Soul Society into Kurosaki, so that he may one day join us as a member of the Godai 13, Yamamoto explained. Toshiro nodded. I understand, Suteicho. He would become a powerful asset to the Godai 13. Have you more to report? No, Suteicho. Dismissed. Alright, go, Yoruichi ordered Chad and Inoue as they approached the Senkamen, the gate back to the living world. I'm going to stay here in Soul Society. Urahara has me supposedly training Ichigo, and I'm going to do some digging around. I'll return to the living world as soon as I can. Understood, Chad acknowledged. Inoue, let's go. Right. The pair began running into the Senkamen, and entered the Dangai, a small dimension between the living world and Soul Society. It was a creepy dimension, consisting of only a single path, while the walls on either side pulsed and moved, as though they were inside a living creature. It was far too dangerous to touch the walls. They had a current of spiritual energy that attempted to consume anything that touched them, as Ishida and Ichigo had experienced firsthand during their first time in the Dangai. However, it served as a highly effective barrier to hollows, who were often far too large, which made the Dangai an efficient way to traverse between the living and spirit worlds. Inoue, what happened to Ichigo? Chad rumbled after a minute of running. He turned into a hollow, Inoue told him, her voice cracking. What? Chad exclaimed. It's only temporary, according to Urahara, Inoue quickly clarified. Everyone's confident that Ichigo will be back soon. I see. Interesting. Chad and Inoue froze, recognizing the voice. A few meters in front of him, a Garganta opened, and Ulquiorra stepped though, his usual uncaring expression still on his face. Kurosaki Ichigo has become a hollow? I had my doubts when Aizen-sama told me, thank you for your information. Ulquiorra-san, what do you want? Inoue asked, a little afraid. I have been ordered by Aizen-sama to take at least one of you hostage, to test if the hollow form of Kurosaki Ichigo truly has lost its memories of Kurosaki Ichigo's life, Ulquiorra explained matter-of-factly. As I am still curious if your group can successfully defeat Yami's Resurrection form, I will grant you two a choice. Who shall I take? He looked piercingly at the pair of humans with spiritual powers. I will take at least one of you. The two of you combined could not hope to defeat me at your current level. Chad and Inoue looked at each other. I should go, Chad told her quietly. My powers are like a hollow's anyway. I'll likely be stronger in Hueco Mundo, and this could prove useful if Ichigo retakes control and attempts to free me. Inoue shook her head. No, Ulquiorra should take me. You're needed in Karakura to protect everyone. You're a lot faster and better at fighting than I am, especially as you got your new left arm. Besides, if Kurosaki-kun does try to save me, he's going to get hurt, and might need my healing. There are other healers on our side in Karakura, but none in Hueco Mundo. Chad frowned, understanding her point but not wanting to admit it. Would your hostage be expected to fight? He asked Ulquiorra directly. No. If I understand Aizen-sama correctly, the hostage will be kept imprisoned within Las Noches. It would be counterproductive to put the hostage's life in imminent danger if we need the hostage to lure Kurosaki Ichigo's hollow, Ulquiorra replied coolly. Father, if we were going to kill you, Aizen-sama would have asked me to simply kill you here. Inoue nodded and stepped forward. I'll be your hostage. Let Chad continue to the living world. Very well. Enter the Garganta. It will take you directly to your holding cell in Las Noches. Inoue approached Ulquiorra and the Garganta, before looking over her shoulder. See you later, Chad. Don't die before I get back. Chad nodded. See you later, Inoue. Don't you die either. Inoue's eyes glinted with understanding before she took a deep breath and entered the Garganta. With a small gesture from the Arrancar, the Garganta closed behind her. Ulquiorra paused before creating another Garganta. How interesting. I had expected her to show more fear, he murmured. Inoue's come a long way, Chad agreed. I think she was afraid, but she was committed to this since you said only one of us could go on. We have faith that Ichigo will rescue her. If there had been no hope, then we would have fought you to the end. Ulquiorra pet his head to the side. What is this faith you speak of? Chad paused to consider the question. It's a feeling based on trust. When I say that I have faith in Ichigo, it means that I trust him to do everything within his power to accomplish something. In this case, to rescue Inoue. The unfeeling Arrancar's eyes narrowed pensively. How do you know he has sufficient power? Chad shrugged. I can't know for sure. This idea of faith seems foolish, Ulquiorra finally said. It is based on the fragile bond of trust and understanding of another's personality. You do not have the power to accomplish your own goals, so you wish someone else to accomplish them for you. How is Kurosaki Ichigo even to know of the girl's capture? Perhaps it is foolish, Chad conceded. But perhaps not. He activated his right arm. This arm's power is based on my faith in my abuelo's teachings, that strength's purpose is to protect. The stronger my faith and will, the stronger this arm's power is. Now Ulquiorra's face changed very subtly. His eyes glittered with interest as he stepped towards Chad. How curious, a feeling given physical manifestation through Reiatsu manipulation. He stopped in his tracks, his facial expression changing slightly once more, this one more of a grimace than anything else Chad had seen him express. How unfortunate, Aizen-sama is waiting for me to report after having captured the girl. Tell me, boy, what is your name? Sato Yasutora. I will remember you, Sato Yasutora. I feel I have learned something more about humans and emotions. Don't die before we have a chance to discuss more, Ulquiorra ordered flatly before opening a Garganta and entering it, the Garganta closing behind him. Chad shook his head. I wonder, is it a good thing or not that Ulquiorra is interested in me? He began running again through the dangai, rushing to return to the living world. Urahara must be alerted. Perhaps he can contact Ichigo. You were certainly quick, Ulquiorra, Aizen complimented mere minutes later, taking in the sight of the powerful Arrancar kneeling a few meters away. The Shinigami were foolish enough to let both Sato Yasutora and the girl into the dangai without any reinforcements, Ulquiorra informed his master. I see. Out of curiosity, why did you not take them both? Aizen inquired from his throne where he sat languidly. Alone, despair will overwhelm the female and keep her from fighting against her fate. Together, they may have encouraged each other and attempted to escape, Ulquiorra responded smoothly. Also, news of her capture will demoralize their fighters, knowing that two of their fighters were completely helpless against one of yours. Well thought out as always, Ulquiorra, Aizen replied with a smile. You are dismissed. Aizen-sama. Ulquiorra stood and withdrew from the room. Kaien, what is your opinion on this matter? Tosen stepped to the side into view from behind Aizen's throne. I dislike taking hostages on principle, he said simply. However, I can see how it follows the path of least bloodshed, by determining now if Kurosaki Ichigo's hollow is a threat. Thank you for your understanding, Aizen said softly. Now, to complete the test, this Cazador de la Luna must be notified of the girl's capture. He smirked knowingly, and with a snap of his fingers. An Arrancar appeared. Ah, Rutaban. Aizen-sama. Rutaban fell to one knee, silently swearing his fealty once again. Unlike all the other Arrancar, Rutaban's mask was still fully formed on his head, despite his otherwise completely human-shaped body. The mask itself was lean, with thin, wide slits of eyes, and long, slightly curved horns, but aside from that it looked fairly unremarkable. Please fetch Zommari Leroux, I have a task for him. And that's a wrap. Aizen is going to send Zommari, Espada 7. Who thought that Grimmjow would be the one chosen? I certainly did, but this idea just came up and I couldn't resist. In regards to Espada Trace, I found this discontinuity frustrating. Every other Espada has used the same style. First, Primera, Stark, second, Segunda, Barragan, fourth, Quarta, Ulquiorra, etc. Why did Haribel introduce herself as Espada Trace? It should have been Tercera Espada. However, that is how Haribel introduced herself, and so I can't help but assume that Nell did the same. Maybe there's a reason for it, I dunno. Ulquiorra's speech to Inoue about looking for a person's heart came to mind when I was thinking of Ulquiorra's order to capture someone. However, Inoue was not alone this time, and Ulquiorra had a chance to meet and talk to Chad, whose powers depend entirely on his will and feelings. I thought this was a brilliant chance for an enlightening conversation between them. Ulquiorra's expression finally changing was a sign of his curiosity, and reluctance of leaving behind what may have finally provided his answers. Can you imagine being SOO bored, nihilistic even, and having only one thing you're curious about but unable to do any sort of research about? And then having the answers right in front of you but not being granted the chance to learn them? I think I'd scream, you. I dearly hope I did not paint Chad as being too weepy or anything, but he's been tearing himself apart over this. Having never killed anyone myself, something I am extremely glad for, I had to use my imagination on how Chad would react. Oscar's backstory, of course, is my own creation. Not exactly my best work, but I had to play with it, and this is how I finally got it to work. As for the revelation of Ishida's character, think about it for a minute. He learned the Quincy skills from his grandfather. His grandfather died because the Shinigami didn't show up, and Ishida wasn't skilled enough to help. Along comes Ichigo. Still new with the power, Ichigo is able to take down a freaking Minos Grande when Ishida couldn't. Ever since, Ichigo has been able to do more and more, progressing at far faster a pace than Ishida. The final straw was Uryu finding that his father, Ryukin, was so much stronger than Uryu was, despite having supposedly given up the Quincy ways. I think it'd be easy for Uryu to develop an inferiority complex. Chapter 12, Control. Urahara-san. Chad exclaimed, emerging from the Senkamen within Urahara's basement. Naturally, the shopkeeper was waiting for him. Sato-kun. Urahara sounded genuinely confused. Where is Inoue-chan? I thought she was with you. She was, but the Danai was invaded by an Espada, Chad quickly explained. Ulquiorra took her as bait for Ichigo's hollow. Urahara's eyes widened. That's bad. That's very, very bad. Especially with her powers of reality rejection. Did Ulquiorra hint that they knew about her powers? Chad shook his head no. Do you have any way to contact Ichigo? The large young man queried. No, Urahara responded distractedly, obviously thinking of what to do. No matter how I look at it, we have to send in a rescue party. Ichigo is strong, but I don't think he's strong enough yet to just take Inoue-chan from Aizen's grasp, not if Aizen is expecting him. I'm going, Chad half stated, half demanded. Of course. Ishida-kun will probably join you if we can contact him, Urahara mused. Chad blinked. Huh. Ishida-kun has been training with his father, who cut him off from all external contact, Urahara quickly explained. Ishida Ryukin is probably at the hospital at this time if you wish to talk to him. I will contact Hitsugaya Taicho and Soul Society and see if they will offer reinforcements. His face set to a determined mask, Chad nodded. I'll be back. With a thought, he activated both arms and vanished with a Paso del Viento. Urahara blinked, then smiled. That's new. It looks like he's gotten much stronger. Then he too disappeared, flickering into a Shuinpa. Chad dashed to the hospital and to the nearby park before he felt another presence behind him. And who are you, with that strange hollow-like Ryatsu? A cold voice asked. I highly advise against attacking my hospital. Chad turned around to see a man who looked like an older version of Ishida Uryu, with a slightly more rounded face. Are you Ishida Ryukin? Chad rumbled. I am. Thank Kami. I need to see Ishida Uryu. Something grave has happened, something he must know. As I told those two Shinigami, Uryu will come back when he is ready, and not before, Ryukin stated with a glare. Would you please grant me an audience with him? Chad pleaded. I'm not here to force him to come back, but to inform him of the fate of one of our friends. Ryukin narrowed his eyes at Chad, pushing his glasses up his nose. Finally, he nodded. Stay right here. I will be back momentarily. Ryukin disappeared with a flash of Hirenkyaku. A few minutes later, Ryukin reappeared. Uryu will be along shortly. Indeed, a scant minute later, the younger Quincy arrived. Chad? Uryu asked in surprise. When did you get back? Just now, but there's no time. Chad fervently answered. Inoue's been captured. What? Uryu gasped. Details, now. Inoue and I were in the Dangai, returning from Soul Society. Ulquiorra appeared, and said he was on orders from Aizen to kidnap at least one of us as bait for Ichigo. We argued briefly, but Inoue was the one taken, Chad summarized. Uryu nodded. Right. Where is Kurosaki? Already in Hueco Mundo. I'll give you details along the way, Chad told him. Urahara is currently trying to get reinforcements from the Shinigami. Don't count on any help from them, Uryu told him bitterly. Don't forget that Rukia and Renji are Ichigo's friends too, Chad countered. Uryu's eyes widened at the rebuttal, but then nodded. He turned to his father. Thank you for the training, Two-san, but I must go. What is so special about this girl, this Inoue? Ryukin questioned coldly. She has the power to reject reality within a limited area of effect, Uryu answered reluctantly. If Aizen gets that power. Ryukin's eyes widened, then narrowed. I see. Go, then, Uryu. Use my training well. Thank you, Two-san. Let's go, Chad. Remembering that Chad didn't have a high-speed technique, he began running normally through the streets. You're slow. Uryu was surprised to see Chad dash past him in a speed comparable to his own Hirenkyaku, though it was still slower. Uryu rapidly caught up, however. Looks like you've gotten a lot faster. He eyed Chad's new arms. And stronger. Chad grunted an affirmative. Yoruichi-sensei is a sadistic trainer. Insecurity crept slowly into Uryu's thoughts. Could Chad have surpassed me as well? Uryu shook his head, focusing on the present. Orihime comes first. Several minutes later, they arrived back at Urahara's shop, where most of the Shinigami had gathered. Ah, Sato-kun, Ishida-kun, the shopkeeper greeted. I was just explaining the situation. And? Uryu looked at the short, white-haired Taicho. Will you help? Hitsugaya sighed. Ishida-san, I owe Inoue-san my life. Unfortunately, the fact of the matter is that I, and the rest of the Shinigami stationed here, need to stay here to help protect the living world from Aizen. Hitsugaya Taicho. Rukia stepped forward. I am going with them. What? Kuchiki-san, did you not hear what I just said? Hitsugaya asked, his voice low and his eyes narrow. I did, but even with me gone, you still have 5 perfectly capable Shinigami, 2 of whom can use Bankai, Rukia pointed out. I only have Shirkai, and my ice powers are not as developed as yours. I am not really needed here, and Orihime is my friend. She shook her head. I cannot just leave her there. Suddenly, a cell phone rang. Everyone blinked as Matsumoto Ranjaku answered her Soul Society-issued cell phone. Matsumoto here. Yes. Yes. But sir. Understood. I will pass along the information. What was that about? Ikaku asked bluntly. Matsumoto did not look happy. We have new orders. We are to return to Soul Society. To ensure we comply and return to Soul Society safely, they are sending Kuchiki Taicho and Zaraki Taicho to escort us all. Rukia and Renji looked positively mutinous. Glancing at them, Hitsugaya was reminded of Yamamoto's words in their previous conversation. Kurosaki Ichigo, how is it you gain our loyalty so easily, so effortlessly? Kuchiki-san, Abaraifuka Taicho, I don't like it either, but the alternative is making Soul Society our enemies while we chase after your friend who may or may not be rescued by Kurosaki, Ishida-san and Sato-san. Renji clenched his fists in helpless anger. Don't wait for us, he bit out bitterly to Uryu and Chad. We'll catch up if we can. When we can, Rukia corrected, meeting her childhood friend's eyes fiercely. Renji nodded at her in acknowledgement. We will catch up, he assured his friends. One way, or another. Uryu's hardened eyes flashed. Very well. Urahara, please open the way to Hueco Mundo. If we cannot count on the Shinigami, there is no point in waiting. I should have known better than to count on Shinigami to aid a Quincy and a spiritually gifted human. He was gratified to see all the Shinigami save Rukia and Renji flinch. That's not fair, Ishida-san, Yumachika responded, running a hand through his hair. You're judging us all on the orders of our boss. For all you know, he's organizing a powerful force to invade Hueco Mundo as we speak. That's not fair, Yumachika-san, Uryu mocked. Your people judged all the Quincy because our leaders were ignorant and refused to negotiate with you Shinigami. For all you knew, they could have been devising a way to modifying our Quincy arrows to not completely obliterate a soul from existence. If you can paint an entire race with a single brush, why can't I? And don't even give me that sheet about, that was then, we've changed since then. You're being led by the same people, governed by the same laws. Change doesn't happen until you want it to happen, and so far I've not seen a single Shinigami save Kurosaki Ichigo and Kuchiki Rukia who showed a shred of compassion of the plight of my people. There was silence for several moments as the Shinigami, even Hitsugaya, tried to formulate an argument. Finally, Hitsugaya looked Uryu straight in the eye. I cannot refute your argument, but allow me to reveal part of our Sateicho's plan as he revealed it to me. I'm listening. Yamamoto Sateicho plans to lure Aizen and his forces here to the living world, where special provisions will be made to ensure the population's safety, while allowing our strongest forces to launch a full-scale assault sans limiter, Hitsugaya related. If I am right, then this is the reason for our being recalled now, to leave virtually no protection in the living world. You could use this as a powerful distraction to infiltrate the enemy's base of operations and rescue Inoue-san. Uryu's mind whirled. That is quite an opportunity. Indeed, Chad murmured aloud, his own not insignificant intelligence easily appreciating the chance being given to them. Hitsugaya Taicho is correct, Urahara stated solemnly, pushing back his hat so his face could be seen clearly. I completed the preparations to protect the living world just earlier today, prior to Chad-kun's return. If you'll follow me, I'll open the way to Hueco Mundo. I highly suggest you find Ichigo before infiltrating Aizen's base of operations. He walked back into his shop, and the only two non-Shinigami in the group followed. Kazidor was feeling uneasy. He had been for the last few hours that he had traveled with Nell and her former fraction, and that troubled him. Something has changed, he murmured. Kazidor, you say something? Pesh asked. Perhaps these guys know something I don't. Something feels different, Kazidor admitted. I'm not sure what, but I'm positive that something bad has happened. Something bad? Dondochaka repeated. Like what? Kazidor had not been in control of Ichigo's body long, and didn't really have the experience required to draw the more common analogies. However, he decided to try anyway. It's like suddenly having this feeling like your enemy has some ace up his sleeve, or like you're just about to step into his trap, but you just don't know it yet. He knew those feelings from personal experience. Ichigo really is a tricky, stubborn bstrd when he wants to be. Pesh looked up, one bony hand on his chin. That's rather specific. I suppose it. Comes down to, whoever your enemy is, what could possibly change to give him an advantage? Kazidor fell silent. That was actually a DMN good question. A more powerful Arrancar? Maybe Aizen invaded Karakura already and we weren't there to help fight back. Ichigo suggested darkly. Kazidor shivered. That's a chilling thought. What's wrong? You're not normally this morbid. You're not the only one getting this bad feeling about things, Ichigo informed him with a strained voice. At times I get the crazy feeling of familiarity, as though there's the barest of sense of something I should recognize. It's like I should know what it is, but the answer keeps eluding me. It's taking every shred of patience I have not to try to take back my body right now and check on my friends. Kazidor blinked. He suddenly had a suspicion, a horrible suspicion of the truth. Does that feeling get stronger when I do this? He purposely reached out with his spiritual sense, feeling out the Reiatsu in the air. Kazidor could swear he could feel his mental partner perk up. Yes, it's much stronger this time. Ichigo paused. Wait. If the feeling is stronger when you're sensing Reiatsu, then you're probably detecting traces of one or more of your friends, Kazidor finished grimly. Which explains my bad feelings as well. They're going to use my friends to lure us in, Ichigo agreed tightly. Kazidor? You're leaking more Reiatsu than usual, don't you know? Dondochaka pointed out nervously. Kazidor's eyes narrowed, making Dondochaka jump back in fear. We're not alone, the orange-haired Arrancar muttered. Show yourself. A new Arrancar sonitoed several meters front of Kazidor. Impressive that you could detect me, the newcomer complimented, his voice a low baritone. The Arrancar was tall, muscular, bald and extremely dark-skinned, and his mask fragment seemed divided into two parts. Atop his head lay a single line of small spikes along the crest, and he also wore a thick bony necklace. He wore Aizen's uniform with obvious pride. My name is Zommari Leroux, Septima Espada. I come bearing a message from Aizen-sama. What is the message? Kazidor inquired with a scowl, mirroring Ichigo's own. Aizen-sama wishes to invite you to join our cause, and to inform you that a human girl, Inoue Orihime, will die if you do not appear before him within the next 12 hours, Zommari relayed. Inoue. Ichigo's voice was full of worry. Kazidor frowned. He knew without asking that Ichigo would break their deal in a heartbeat if it meant saving his friend, and he actually liked the current arrangement. Well, looks like I have no choice. He let loose a wild grin. Best kill this one now then. Alright, I'll go see Aizen, after I kill you. Kazidor shouted, dashing at Zommari with Sonito. Zommari merely shook his head, and let himself be stabbed. Kazidor blinked. That was too easy. Indeed it was. Kazidor spun, seeing another Zommari standing a few feet away, completely unharmed. He chanced a glance at the one he'd stabbed, only to find that it was gone. What under the heavens? How did you do that? He demanded. Out of all the Espada, my Sonito is the fastest, the dark-skinned Arrancar answered with only the barest of hints of smugness in his voice. What you just saw was my Gemello Sonito. When I move at my maximum speed, I can create up to 5 afterimages of myself. That's impressive, but I'm still going to kill you, Kazidor complimented with a grin. And that's something we'll have to try. Speed is our specialty, Ichigo. DMN right. I fail to see the point of this fight, Zommari stated, looking his opponent dead in the eye. I have performed my duty as Aizen-sama's faithful servant and informed you of the girl's capture, and you are not fast enough to keep me from leaving. There is nothing keeping me here. In the time it took Kazidor to blink, Zommari was gone. DMN it. Kazidor cursed, stabbing Zangetsu into the sands of Hueco Mundo angrily. I'm not gonna get a better shot than that to kill him. We can worry about that later, Kazidor. We have to go save Inoue. Ichigo insisted. What about your other friends? I'm sure they're already on their way. We can wait for them. Have you forgotten what Zommari said already? Aizen's gonna kill her in 12 hours if we don't show up. Who knows where the hell my other friends will end up in Hueco Mundo? Kazidor frowned. I can't believe I'm the one telling you this, but it's not exactly a good idea charging in alone, when we don't know the full capabilities of everyone there. I enjoy a good fight, but going alone is suicide. He has a point, Ichigo, Zangetsu murmured quietly. Ichigo seethed with frustration, not wanting to acknowledge the point but knowing what they said was the truth. What about with Nell then? He questioned. If we can get her to recover her powers, then we'd have a former third Espada on our side. If that ain't sufficient backup for a quick in-and-out mission, I don't know what is. Kazidor thought about that possibility for several seconds as he turned to view the errand car he was currently traveling with, who were currently hiding behind a large sand dune. He sighed then shook his head slowly, negatively. From the looks of it, Nell's gonna need a DMN powerful trigger to regain her old form in that short of a time. So, no. We don't have any way of knowing when or where our backup will appear in Hueco Mundo. Ichigo pointed out. For all we know, they will be too late. And I'm telling you, I am not going to try to assault Aizen's fortress without backup. You heard Urahara, we are the last resort against Aizen. It's foolish to risk us for a single woman. Listen to you. Ichigo spat. You are not my hollow, you are a coward hiding in a hollow's skin. Kazidor bristled at the insult. I am no coward. I merely have no interest in your friends, I only want to grow stronger. Why should I risk my skin for your friends? You lost to me in our last fight, horse. Suddenly, Kazidor realized that perhaps he had gone a bit too far when he felt Ichigo's Ryatsu levels rise dangerously. The next thing he knew, the errand car felt himself dragged into their inner world. The first thing he saw when he arrived was Ichigo's back. The Shinigami had drawn his Zanpakuto and was looking up at the crimson moon that hung in the sky. Cazador de la Luna. Ichigo turned to view his hollow counterpart, his eyes determined. How do you feel about another deal? What? It's obvious we won't agree about this situation. You earned control of my body, and you still have over a week left before our next scheduled fight, Ichigo admitted. His brown eyes hardened. But I can't let Inoue get killed. So, I have a deal to propose. Cazador's eyes glittered in interest. The last deal we made turned out really well for both of us. I'm listening. We fight, once more for control. If I win, I get control of my body and we return to our bi-monthly fights. Nothing changes. And if I win? Kazador leered. You keep my body for as long as you want it, Ichigo told him, and I won't argue with your decisions any longer. Truly a tempting offer, Ichigo's hollow side contemplated. There's no real risk to me in this deal, either I win and I gain eternal dominance, or I lose and get the chance for dominance later. He grinned insanely. Let's do it. To Kazador's mild surprise, Ichigo grinned tightly, holding his Zanpakuto in front of him, in an all too familiar position. I'd hoped you would agree. Bankai. Bankai so soon, Ichigo? Kazador taunted, drawing his own Zangetsu. A sign of weakened dash. Kazador found himself cut off as he instinctually brought his cleaver in front of him horizontally, just in the nick of time to block Ichigo, who had suddenly appeared right in front of him to delivery a brutally vicious downward slash. Getsuga Tensho. Ichigo's hollow side let loose a sharp cry of pain as the Getsuga raged against his Zanpakuto, pushing him into and through two of the sideways skyscrapers that made up Ichigo's mind before landing in a crater on a third. Kazador got to his feet, bruised and bleeding slightly in several places. Not bad, he admitted. But, without warning, Ichigo materialized in front of him in another impressive display of his mastery of Shunpa plus Bankai speed enhancement, already swinging his Tensa Zangetsu, a silent Getsuga already charged and ready. You talk too much. Kazador blocked, now wielding two Zanpakuto that were crossed together in an X, He'd barely managed to manifest his alter ego Shirkai Zangetsu into existence so he could block. The two Zangetsu were successfully holding off Ichigo's Bankai, though he was buckling as Ichigo focused more power into the move. With a burst of Sonido, Kazidor disappeared, leaving Ichigo's Getsuga to collide harmlessly into another skyscraper. I don't stand a chance like this, I have to use Resurrection. He used Sonido several times, trying to gain enough distance to buy himself enough time. Tear the sky as dash. I don't think so. Ichigo said coolly, Shuanpai-NG, so he was right behind Kazidor's left shoulder, Tensa Zangetsu already in motion. Kazidor was forced to abandon his Resurrection attempt in favor of getting the hell out the way with Sonido. He wants to keep me from using Resurrection, giving himself the necessary advantage to win, he realized with a smile. A cunning, ruthless, practically heartless plan. Ichigo's definitely serious about this fight, with everything on the line like this. He frowned, though, as he once more crossed blades with Ichigo before disappearing with Sonido. Problem is, I can't find a flaw. Ichigo in his Bankai is far too fast to escape, too strong to beat down with brute force. My only hope is a distraction. Kazidor locked blades with his opponent once more, only to find the wind knocked out of him as Ichigo took advantage of Kazidor's occupied arms and kicked him in the stomach as hard as he could. Kazidor was sent flying into another crater. Ow, Kazidor grunted. I just need 2 seconds. Getsuga Tensho, he cried, swinging his Zanpakuto together instinctually as Ichigo dashed at him. Ichigo suddenly found that his speed was a detriment as he was suddenly too close to dodge the twin Getsuga. He was forced to block. It only took him a second to deflect the blast upwards, but the Shinigami had the sinking feeling he was too late. He was. Tear the sky asunder, Zangetsu. Kazidor screamed gleefully with a maniacal grin, holding both Zangetsu in front of him. F dash. Ichigo cursed, materializing his second Tensa Zangetsu, knowing he'd need it in just a moment. As the smoke cleared, it occurred to him that this was the first time Ichigo had gotten a chance to see Kazidor's Ajucha's Resurrection form, so he studied it closely. Kazidor's hollow mask had expanded, wrapping entirely around his head and forming a curved horn on either side. As before, the mask stopped at the upper jaw, allowing only Kazidor's lower jaw to be seen. The mask had crimson marking forming a pattern around the Kazidor's head, but another marking trailed down from each eye hole, down to where the mask ended. Slightly surprisingly, the markings continued past the mask down to his neck. A long mane of orange hair flowed down from the back of the mask, all the way down to mid-back. Two long, curved horns aiming forward had appeared as well, giving Kazidor a fearsome look. The scale-like red-on-white armor that Kazidor had sported as a Jillian had changed as well, instead of covering the entire torso, it only covered his rib cage up to his shoulders. His hollow hole was in the middle of that armor, with red markings extending outwards from that hole, presumably to the back, with a couple of the lines reaching up to meet the markings on the neck. The lizard-style frills no longer grew around his neck. Instead, the frills had been changed into what looked like red fur surrounding all but the very front of his neck, though the fur still angled upwards much like the frills did. There was more of the same fur surrounding his ankles and wrists. Kazidor's crimson leggings still bore white wavy lines as they had in his Jillian Resurrection, and similar blood-red lines wound down his arms from where the markings on his armor met his shoulders. The lizard tail that he'd sported as a Jillian was completely gone, and Kazidor's feet still resembled a human's, except the toenails had extended and curved to resemble claws. That's better, the Arrancar said, casually shrugging his shoulders to make them pop. It was a good strategy, Ichigo, trying to keep me from unleashing my Resurrection, but you were doomed to fail. Ichigo grit his teeth, angry at his failure, but still determined to win. I may have failed to keep you in your previous form, but I refuse to lose here. You think you can last long? Kazidor taunted. We are using both of our Tensa Zangetsu, your body can't hope to last long in the speeds we'll be fighting at. But unlike you, I have high-speed regeneration. I can keep this up forever. Ichigo Shunpaed behind Kazidor, swinging with his left Tensai Zangetsu, only to be summarily blocked as his hollow self held his sword over his shoulder. "You may have the regeneration, you soul-leeching bstrd." Ichigo growled out, before disappearing again. He began to circle around Kazidor, using several successive shunpa that made him seem to flicker in and out of existence, at times leaving 3 or 4 afterimages at a time. "But I will not lose." Kazidor stood still, keeping both his Zanpakuto at the ready, waiting. There. He barely blocked a strike from Ichigo, only to realize that he'd only blocked one of Ichigo's swords when he felt his right leg get cut off by the second one. Ichigo attempted to press his advantage, striking repeatedly, but Kazidor managed to block every strike and then Sonido out of the way on his remaining leg. In the time it took Ichigo to catch up using shunpa, Kazidor's leg had already half regrown. "I need to use more power." Apparently, Kazidor had the same thought, as they slammed all 4 of their blades together, all of them smothered in a violent Ryatsu. Getsuga Tenshu. Several minutes before. "What do you think Kazidor's doing?" Pesh whispered to his comrades as he watched Kazidor stare into space, making subtle movements as though having an internal dialogue. "I don't know, don't you know," Dondochaka responded, confused. "Maybe he's talking to himself?" Nell suggested. Maybe he's trying to figure out what to do next." Pesh postulated excitedly. "Could be," Dondochaka acceded. He repressed a shiver at seeing a wide, malicious smirk form on Kazidor's face. "But I don't think we're gonna like what he's thinking, don't you know?" Suddenly Kazidor froze. Then a pulse of Ryatsu erupted from him, and all 3 observers got a very strong feeling that they should get the hell out of there and watch from a much, much longer distance. "Run away!" Pesh cried, and the 3 of them scrambled for cover several more sand dunes back, out of sight. They were just in time. Kazidor's body was beginning to look around, searching for a target. Seeing none, and sand in every other direction, the berserker began walking towards the palace in the distance, lost no chase. Seconds later, the berserker clutched his head and let loose a hollow roar. He slashed out with his left hand, a black Tensai Zangetsu appearing mid-swing. A silent Getsuga was unleashed upon the sand dunes, sending sand flying everywhere. His right hand held the white Zangetsu, still in Shirkai state. He began running towards Lost No Chase, slowly changing with every step he took to Kazidor's Resurrection form. "This is exceedingly odd," Pesh said quietly as they shadowed the body of their friend. "Normally a resurrection is instantaneous, but this one seems to take time. I don't think Kazidor is in control of his body." "What would make that happen?" Nell queried. "Maybe he hasn't eaten enough hollows recently, and now he's struggling to put down the hollows he has?" Pesh answered somberly. "Although I've never heard of that happening to an Arrancar before." Another wave of Ryatsu emerged, coinciding with when Kazidor completed his resurrection. The white Zangetsu changed shape to Tensai Zangetsu, and the transformation sped up. It took mere seconds for the berserker to completely assume the form of Kazidor's resurrection. "He seems to have a purpose, don't you know," Dondochaka observed. "He hasn't done anything but head towards Lost No Chase. To be fair, it is the biggest structure around," Pesh justified. "Maybe he's looking for someone strong to fight." "Let's make sure we're not seen then," Nell whispered in fear. Both her companions nodded. Ichigo's inner world. Ichigo lost the war of Getsugas and found himself flying through a skyscraper himself, his hands and arms bleeding from parts of the Getsuga that had gotten him. "DM in it," he swore, keeping his eyes on Kazidor. "There has to be a way to beat him." "You're not doing too badly, Ichigo," Kazidor admitted. "I thought for sure my resurrection form would annihilate you, but you've gotten stronger too." He grinned, a fearsome sight combined with his mask. "But you're still no match for me. Not when your bones are already cracking from the strain of using both Tensai Zangetsu, and you don't have high-speed regeneration to repair it." Ichigo scowled, bitterly acknowledging that truth. Something Kazidor said nagged at him, however. It had ever since Kazidor had used his Resurrection. There was something about high-speed regeneration that just refused to leave Ichigo alone, and he was afraid it would start to affect his reaction speed if he didn't figure it out. High-speed regeneration, my mask. His eyes widened. Wait, I could use my mask in here, when I learned how to use the regeneration. Ichigo barely kept a smirk from forming as he thought furiously, using Shuinpa to avoid a crippling slash from Kazidor. He began spinning both Tensa Zangetsu by the ends of their chains, charging up a Getsuga. Come to think of it, Kazidor could use my power initially. He was in Arankar form, which is a mixture of Shinigami and Hollow. Why can't I do the same? Zero. Kazidor screamed, a zero having been forming in between his horns. Getsuga Tenzo. Ichigo roared, slashing both Tensa Zangetsu across his body. The Black Crescent attack Ichigo unleashed slammed into Kazidor's Crimson Zero, slicing into it and forcing the Zero to split into two separate ones, each of which missed Ichigo by a mile. Unfortunately, by the time the Getsuga had reached Kazidor, it had run out of power and merely dissipated. Ichigo took advantage of Kazidor being unable to see him through the Zero to Shuinpa to a slightly safer location. Please let this work. Ichigo thought frantically, as he brought his left hand, the one holding the white Tensa Zangetsu over his face. To his satisfaction, he could see his fingers starting to emit the sinister-feeling hollow Ryatsu. He could feel his mask there, just waiting to be called into existence. He allowed himself to smirk now. Hey, Kazidor, he called calmly, Shuinpa several meters behind the hollow. Kazidor turned around, and while Ichigo couldn't see Kazidor's eyes clearly behind the mask, he was sure they had widened. As it was, the rest of his hollow self's body language expressed shock. No. Kazidor whispered. Ichigo's smirk widened. Oh hell yes. He tore at the air in front of his face, ripping his mask into place. He wore the old mask, the white one with red tribal marks only the left side, though Ichigo could not see this. Time to take your rightful place, Kazidor. Kazidor blinked, and then Ichigo was gone. He felt pain in his abdomen and looked down. A black Tensa Zangetsu was embedded within his stomach. Holding it was a masked Ichigo, who tore the blade up, all the way to his hollow hole before pulling it out. I've lost. Kazidor realized as he felt his feet begin to disintegrate. DMN it. I never expected an idiot like you to realize you could use my power here as well. Ichigo took off the mask and crushed it. You only have yourself to blame, he revealed quietly. What? It was you who reminded me. I am Vizard, Ichigo said heavily. A mixture of Shinigami and Hollow. If you can use my Shinigami powers, I can use your Hollow ones. Perhaps so, King, Kazidor conceded, his torso starting to fade away. And you have just earned my Ajucha's mask. What do you mean? Ichigo demanded. Kazidor laughed, his neck already gone. Figure it out on your own, King. My lead should be smart and strong enough to figure it out without my hand feeding him the answers. With that, he was gone. The Vizard narrowed his eyes. Fine. He turned on his heel, noting that the night sky was fading into the sunny sky Ichigo's inner world had originally. Now to save Inoue. You with me, Zangetsu. The Zanpakuto spirit had been sitting on a nearby flagpole since Kazidor had faded. He jumped down now and looked Ichigo in the eyes. Always. I would recommend checking in with Urahara however, perhaps you can acquire allies as a Shinigami that you could not as a Hollow. How would I? Never mind. Since I am back in control, I should be able to use Kazidor's Garganta ability, Ichigo figured out. Thanks for the advice, and for training with me. Zangetsu nodded. You have grown strong, Ichigo. Now go and demonstrate your strength. Ichigo found himself back in Hueco Mundo, and felt a strange mask on his face. He removed it and looked at it. It was the same shape as the mask he was used to, but it had a stripe going up and down each eye, a stripe that stained the teeth of the mask and reached down to the bottom of the mask. It also felt heavier than the old one. Heavier, and stronger. Ichigo realized, shattering the mask in his fist. So this is what Kazidor meant by his Ajucha's mask. That taken care of, he glanced at himself, he was back in his Shinigami outfit. Good, he murmured. Who are you? Pesh demanded as he and his friends jumped out from behind the dune they had been hiding behind. You're obviously not Kazidor de la Luna, but you came out of his body, don't you know? Dondochaka agreed. Me? Ichigo asked. I'm Kurosaki Ichigo. Kazidor is the hollow that lives inside me. I gave him control for a while, but now I'm back in charge. You look like a Shinigami. Dondochaka accused. I am, sort of, Ichigo replied. Aren't Shinigami evil? Nell asked innocently. They kill hollows for no good reason. Ichigo thought about how to respond to that. Well, Shinigami think hollows are evil, as they eat humans to survive, he finally said. And a lot of humans become Shinigami after they die if they're not eaten by hollows. So Shinigami and hollows fight each other, each side trying to get stronger. Does that mean you're going to kill Nell? Nell asked fearfully. Pesh and Dondochaka tensed, ready to intercept any strike Ichigo may attempt. Ichigo violently shook his head. No. No, I'm not. You may be a former Espada, and a hollow, but I'm not going to kill you. You guys eat other hollows to survive, right? As long as you don't go after humans, I won't go after you. Besides. He looked at Nell and smiled gently, patting her cracked mask very gently. You look like a little girl to me. And little girls in my world need to be protected. Nell's eyes widened. You're the nicest Shinigami Nell's ever met, she informed him, wonder in her voice. Ichigo chuckled lowly. I'm probably the only Shinigami you've ever met, outside of Aizen and his gang. That reminds me. Listen, I need to go back to the human world for a while. Try to stay out of trouble, okay? I'll be back really soon. Pesh quickly made an executive decision, grabbing Nell's hand. Right. Come, Nell-sama. Nell looked reluctant, but let herself be dragged back by Pesh and Dondochaka. Once they were out of earshot, Pesh began fervently whispering to her. It's best to just let him go. But why? He is a Shinigami, and who knows if he'll change his mind. Like he said, to Shinigami, hollows are evil, so he wouldn't think twice about going back on his word to kill us. Pesh tried to explain. Ichigo wouldn't do that, Nell argued, her lisp butchering her pronunciation of Ichigo. You can't know that, Pesh countered. You've known him for all of 3 minutes. He could be trying to fool you. Nell pouted, not wanting to concede the point. If Nell has to. In the meantime, Ichigo had summoned his mask and looked at it, it was the lighter Jillian mask. Okay, should work. He put it back on his face. Now, how do I create a Garganta? Well, Kazidor just slashed in the air like this with his claws. Ichigo tensed his left hand into a claw shape, charged it with some hollow Ryatsu, and swiped with it into the air. He was rather surprised when he felt the hollow Ryatsu form a strange pattern in his fingertips, and saw the Garganta form. That was, surprisingly easy. When I thought that hollows learn things by instinct, I didn't realize it was that instinctual. He let the Garganta close and this time set his mind's eye on Urahara's secret underground training basement, thinking that perhaps it would take him directly there. This time, when he opened the Garganta, he stepped into it. All of a sudden, Ichigo felt himself falling. Reacting instinctively, he channeled Ryatsu to his feet and began to airwalk. So, this is the place between dimensions. It was rather turbulent, it took a strong will to maintain his airwalking technique by solidifying the spirit particles in this void. Ichigo looked around. Behind him was almost pitch black, but in front of him was lighter, a sort of grayish color. Ichigo headed towards the lightest part, hoping it would take him to his preferred destination. Not long later, maybe half an hour of running and maintaining the airwalk, Ichigo found himself at a barrier. Instinctively, he made the same clawing motion as before, and tore open the barrier between worlds. He emerged into Urahara's training basement, as he had wanted. Quickly removing his mask and crushing it, Ichigo let the Garganta close. Looks like I'm back. Time to check up with Urahara. And once I'm done here, I'll see if I can open a Garganta straight to Inoue. His hands tightened into fists. Inoue. I'm coming for you. Chapter 13, Reunion. Kurosaki Ichigo was quite literally a blur as he shunpaed up to the trapdoor. Pushing it open, the wizard leapt up into Urahara's shop proper. Naturally, his rush meant that he made no efforts toward stealth, and the loud noise he was making alerted the residents that there was someone unexpected. Ichigo. Urahara poked his head around the corner. What are you doing here? We weren't expecting you back for at least another week. Ichigo scowled. That was before Inoue got kidnapped. I'm here to see if I can get some reinforcements before I rescue her. The shopkeeper shook his head. Ishida-kun and Sato-kun already tried, right before they left via my Garganta to Hueco Mundo. The Shinigami regiment was ordered by Yamamoto Satecho to return to Soul Society to prepare for Aizen's invasion. Wait, does that mean that no one's here to protect Karakura? Ichigo exclaimed, incredulous that anyone could be that stupid. It's part of the plan, Urahara told him with a sly smile. There is to be a two-front battle. Aizen is to be lured here to the living world, and a special contraption of my own design will ensure the safety of the population of Karakura while allowing all the Taicho of Soul Society to fight at their full power. No limiters. Ichigo, despite himself, was awed at the thought for a moment, imagining facing Byakuya and Kenpachi, the two Shinigami Taicho he'd actually fought, working together to kill him. They both almost killed me individually, together. He shivered involuntarily. And combined with all the other Taicho, who must be at least as strong. That's an overwhelming force. That it is. Not all the Taicho will be fighting here in Karakura, naturally, Urahara cheerfully continued. Some of them will be going to Hueco Mundo to take out the Espada there. Who will be staying in Soul Society to keep Aizen from invading in the meantime? Ichigo asked pointedly. The exiled Shinigami shook his head. From what I understand, some of the Fukateicho will stay behind and alert us if something like that happens. In that event Soul Society's forces will retreat and take care of the threat. We cannot really afford to keep any of our Taicho back in this fight, the Espada are too strong, especially in conjunction with Aizen, Tosen and Ichimaru. Ichigo had to admit that point. Alright, sounds like you got a plan for here. I need to meet up with Ishida and Chad. Do you know where in Hueco Mundo they are? Urahara looked up and assumed a thoughtful expression. Hard to say, really. I can't know for sure, but if you take my Garganta you should end up pretty close to them. Ichigo sighed. That'll have to do. I can materialize their spirit ribbons if need be and locate them that way. Lead the way, hat and clogs. As they got up, there was a knock on the door to the Urahara Shoten. Who could that be at this time? Urahara questioned, his voice reflecting obvious curiosity. As the shopkeeper opened the door, Ichigo was relieved to see the faces of Kachiki Rukia and Abarai Renji. Guys! Ichigo! They looked surprised, but their faces hardened swiftly. Ichigo, have you heard? Rukia asked urgently. Yeah, Inoue's been captured, Ichigo affirmed grimly. Heard it from one of the Espada, who was acting as a messenger for Aizen. But I thought you had been ordered back to Soul Society. Nisama helped us back, Rukia told him. Renji grinned tightly. He said that he had been ordered to bring us back. He had no further orders to keep us there. Who knew that Kuchiki Taicho was so devious? Ichigo was stunned for a moment, before he smirked in satisfaction. Looks like Byakuya's lightened up a bit. Alright then, glad to have you along. Let's go. Follow me, Urahara ordered, leading them into the basement. A few minutes later, they were in the Garganta, making their way to Hueco Mundo in the same turbulent space between dimensions that Ichigo had just been traveling through. Where've you been, Ichigo? Renji demanded. Hueco Mundo, the orange-haired Shinigami answered shortly. Reason's a bit of a story, but we got a few minutes, so. Ichigo quickly explained his situation with Kazidor, and told how he'd lost one of their fights, so Kazidor had taken over and left to Hueco Mundo per their agreement, to evolve as a hollow. And Kazidor managed to evolve to an Ajuchas relatively quickly. We made the acquaintance of a few peaceful-seeming Arankar, but then we got a message from Aizen's messenger boy, saying that Kazidor had 12 hours to appear before him or Inoue would be killed. I persuaded Kazidor to fight me again early, won, and came back here to gather reinforcements. You know the rest of the story. That's a lot to take in, Renji admitted. You know that we'll never tell Soul Society, of course. Rukia, who had known of a lot of this previously, was better able to continue the questioning. What's the significance of this hollow ego of yours, this Cazador de la Luna, evolving to Ajuchas? Simply put, my hollow powers get a major power-up, Ichigo replied. Hollow powers? Renji swallowed the lump in his throat, thinking about just how strong Ichigo was without them. What sort of powers do you get? To my knowledge, I've got high-speed regeneration capabilities, plus a powerful boost to my strength, speed and raw power, Ichigo informed them. Not sure what else yet. Kazador'll be teaching me more later, provided there is more to teach. Rukia scoffed. As if you need any more raw power. Her insides froze as though her own Zanpakuto had turned on her as Ichigo merely gave her a haunted look. The message was clear, I need every advantage I can get. Are they really that strong? Renji queried stonily. Ichigo shook his head. Not all of them, I'm sure. The 10th Espada, Yami, is rather weak outside of his Resurrection. I could take him out with just my Shirkai. According to other Espada, his Resurrection makes him the strongest of the Espada. The 7th Espada, Zommari, was fast and had the ability to go so fast he can create up to 5 clones of himself. Not sure about his actual strength. Number 6, Grimjow, was fast, but I presume was much stronger than the 7th. His Resurrection makes him faster and stronger, and he specializes in Hakuta, with his hands turned into claws. The 5th, Nitra, was incredibly strong at the expense of his speed, but also had some regeneration ability. Outside of Resurrection, he uses a halberd-type weapon. But in Resurrection he can have up to 6 arms, each of which wielding a scythe. The 4th, Ulquiorra, is ungodly fast, faster than my Bankai. I don't know anything more about him, or anything at all concerning the other Espada. Even so, that's valuable intelligence, Rukia appreciated. Thank you for the update, Ichigo. Ichigo merely nodded, sensing that they were about to encounter the dimensional boundary into the realm of hollows. Look sharp. There's a good chance we're gonna be in a fight the minute we emerge in Hueco Mundo, especially if they already detected Ishida and Chad. 2 solid nods acknowledged the advice, and then they broke through to Hueco Mundo, landing on the desert surface. A brief look around proved that neither the Quincy nor the human with hollow-like powers were anywhere nearby. Any ideas? Renji asked. Rukia pointed at Las Noches in the distance. Ichigo, is it safe to say that that structure over there is the headquarters for Aizen and his forces? Yeah. I'm certain Inoue's in there somewhere, he responded affirmatively. Ishida and Chad probably headed in that direction. Let's start running then. Renji suggested strongly. Why not just take a ride on your Bankai? Ichigo proposed. Your heightened Ryatsu will alert our friends that we're coming, to just stay put or come to us, and we can move pretty quickly. Rukia bopped him upside the head. Because if Renji uses his Bankai here, we'll have hollows swarming us in minutes. Did you forget that hollows are attracted to Ryatsu? Ichigo rubbed the spot where the midget had smacked him. Right. Sorry I asked. Besides, I'm pretty sure I can sense them in that direction. Rukia pointed towards Las Noches. They're not too far, we should be able to catch up shortly if we use Shunpa. Renji and Ichigo nodded at her, letting Rukia take point. After all, she could sense their friends far better than they could. They all disappeared in a flicker of Shunpa. Several minutes later, they heard the sounds of a fight. Ichigo picked up the pace, strkng past Rukia easily, racing up to a large sand dune blocking the way. Ishida and Chad appeared to be fighting a large sand hollow. Ichigo was only mildly surprised to see they were accompanied by Nell's group. Ichigo drew Zangetsu from his back and was about to charge a Getsuga when Rukia put a hand on his shoulder and pulled him back. It's sand, he'll just reform if you don't hit him with an elemental attack, change his composition, Rukia explained, drawing her own Zanpakuto. Allow me. Dance, Sodi no Shireiki. Before Ichigo's very eyes, Rukia's sword changed into an elegant white, a long ribbon flowing out from the hilt as the short Shinigami turned Sodi no Shireiki counterclockwise in front of her. Tsugi no Mai, the ice user uttered, lightly piercing the ground rapidly 4 times in a semicircle in front of her. From each spot, ice particles flowed upwards and began to surround her sword. Rukia took a battle stance, holding her sword up to her shoulder as though preparing for a powerful forward move. Hakuren. The ice swirled violently around Sodi no Shireiki before firing forward in a wave of ice, completely freezing the sand hollow, before it toppled over and shattered. And that, Rukia told Ichigo with a look of superiority, is how you handle enemies that your standard cut your foe to pieces strategy can't take care of. Ichigo was highly tempted to scoff at her, but his curiosity won out. But wouldn't a good slash to the hollow's mask take out pretty much any hollow, regardless of composition? Renji looked at Ichigo oddly. You know, that's a good question. That's actually one of the topics for discussion in the Shinigami Academy, meant to inspire critical thinking. There's no particularly solid evidence one way or another, Rukia told Ichigo. I think it would depend on the skill of the Shinigami, and the regenerative ability of the hollow in question. She reached into a pocket somewhere and pulled out her sketchbook. Oh no. I am not going to submit myself to her drawings again. Too late, as Rukia had already quickly drawn a couple of pictures and shoved it into his face. Ichigo's brows furrowed as he struggled to recognize what was in front of him. There seemed to be a bunny in a chibi-sized Shinigami outfit, wielding a sword that looked suspiciously like Zangetsu, facing off against a comical version of the hollow Rukia had just frozen, which was only recognizable by the obvious mask and hollow hole. The next picture showed the hollow sliced in half, and then reforming. Directly underneath that slideshow of pictures was another set. This one had a bunny in a coat with a katana. Okay, now I know that's supposed to be me, but that drawing SCKS. The hollow had a lot of scribbles on its mask. Are those supposed to be visual representations of me at high speed? The next picture had the hollow disintegrating. Ichigo frowned. Oh, like if I, in my Bankai, used my high speed and strength to cut that sand hollow's mask into thousands of fragments, it might finish it as its regeneration couldn't keep up with me. Whereas if I slashed it once, the hollow would probably reform as it was only a single slash. Rukia nodded, pleased. I'm glad my drawing helped you out. I would have understood better without the drawings, the orange-haired Shinigami replied deadpan. A second later, he found himself lying face down in the sand, a pain in his back from where Rukia had kicked him. Ow. Whenever you're ready to join us. Ishida called out, an impatient look on his face and a tick above his left eye as he stood on Bawabua, watching the whole interaction. I hate being ignored like this. Ichigo picked himself up and jumped down to his friends atop Bawabua, Rukia, and Renji following behind. Hey guys. Not that I'm complaining, Kurosaki, but I thought your hollow would be in control, Ishida pointed out. He was, until about an hour ago, the wizard admitted. When Inoue was kidnapped, I fought him again for control and won. Best not to tell them the stakes. Ichigo. Nell cried out, glomping Ichigo's leg. You did come back. Ichigo let out a very small smile as he patted Nell's helmet. I told you I would, didn't I? Ichigo, you know these hollows? Chad queried. Yeah. Long story, but they're technically on our side. They used to work for Aizen, but they were betrayed, and now hate him, Ichigo quickly explained, more for the benefit of Rukia and Renji than anyone else. I'm sure Chad and Ishida have already gotten some information. Pesh and Dondochaka are Nell's former subordinates, from when she was an Espada. Wait, this shrimp was an Espada? Renji asked incredulously, a disbelieving look on his face. Espada trace, Ichigo confirmed with a smirk. Another of the Espada attacked her and damaged her mask, which made her lose most of her power. Before you get any ideas about killing us while she's weaker, we're very, very good at running away, Pesh told them warily. Ishida sighed. We're not going to attack you. Like Kurosaki said, it sounds like you're on our side. Besides, our mission isn't to kill the Espada, it's to save Orihime. Bawabawa, would you please continue towards Las Noches? The large worm-like hollow made noises of agreement as it once more began moving towards the palace. We should be there in about half an hour, don't you know, Dondochaka announced. Ichigo gripped Zangetsu's hilt, the cloth-covered Zanpakuto silently reassuring him as he scowled. Inoue, hold on. Inoue Orihime sat quietly in her room in Las Noches. She had felt Kurosaki-kun's hollow Ryatsu erupt some time ago, and then it had settled down, more into the Shinigami Ryatsu she was accustomed to. And then he had disappeared off her radar. Kurosaki-kun's probably regained control and returned to the living world. She smiled grimly. Which means that he probably knows by now that I've been captured. She waited for a time, meditating as she kept tabs on all the Ryatsu signatures she knew. When she sensed Chad and Ishida without Ichigo, she had grown confused, but Ichigo soon after, catching up with them. Good. Now, let's see if I can join them. Tsubaki, she murmured. Do you think you can cut through the wall, or the bars on the window? The fairy materialized from her hairpin and flew over to the wall, inspecting it. He even punched it a couple of times. It's made from a very strong material, the ninja-like Tsubaki assessed. He quickly flitted outside and back in, judging the thickness of the walls. The wall appears to be about 6 inches thick. I believe if you focused hard enough, I could cut through it. Let me check the bars. A minute later, he descended in front of Inoue. No good, the bars are made out of something stronger than the walls, even if they are thinner. Orihime nodded. All right. Thank you, Tsubaki. No, thank you, Orihime. You're finally starting to consider proper applications of my power outside of a last resort, Tsubaki told her with a slightly approving tone, right before he disappeared back into her hairpins. The wielder of rejection powers eyed the wall and tried to consider various scenarios. Well, Tsubaki says we can cut through it. If I do, I can use Santen Keshin to fly to the others safely. Her face changed to worry. But I had a hard time with the weakest Aaronkar, and I'm not fast enough to escape. I don't have a high-speed technique like the others. So I'd be easily recaptured if they found out I'd escaped before I could meet up with everyone. She shook her head. I need to stop thinking like that. If I don't want my friends to have risked their lives to save me, I have to risk it. Inoue steadied her resolve and double-checked that no Ryatsu presences were nearby. Sensing none, she brought her hands to her hairpins. Tsubaki, Koten Zanshuan. I reject, she whispered, using the full power version. I need to get out of here, to save my friends. Tsubaki manifested himself into the lethally sharp projectile and fired forward. He sliced right through the wall at about head height, widening his cutting edge to approximately a foot wide. Then he repeated the process a few times, making a literal door before returning to Inoue's hairpins. The young woman allowed herself a smile before pushing the door out of place easily, sending it crashing down into the sands below. Santen Keshin, she murmured, stepping out into the open air, and onto her golden rejection shield. To my friends, she whispered hastily, sensing someone coming. Quickly. She raced off, kneeling on her shield to keep her balance as she flew to rejoin her friends. Ishida frowned. You're not gonna believe this, guys, but I could swear that Orihime is approaching, but she's being pursued. In no way managed to escape on her own. Ichigo gripped Zangetsu's hilt tightly over his shoulder, ready to draw at a moment's notice. Where? Not too far. Let's go. Ishida ordered, taking charge as he leapt into the air with Hirenkyaku, flying quickly. The Shinigami in the party quickly followed, blurring into a Shunpa. Chad activated his arms and followed on land with his Paso del Viento. What about us, don't you know? Dondochaka asked Nell and Pesh. Well, if we follow, there's a chance we'll get caught up in the fight, Pesh pointed out. But Ichigo and everyone else were nice. Nell insisted. We should follow them. Are you sure, Nell-sama? The tall insectoid Arankar questioned. Bawabawa, follow them. Nell ordered as best she could in her childish voice. Orihime glanced over her shoulder. She was being pursued by someone whose Ryatsu felt completely unfamiliar. Whoever it was wasn't as fast as she had seen Ishida go, but he or she was definitely fast enough to be slowly catching up to her. To Orihime's relief, she could feel her friends approaching quickly, and she quickly began her descent to meet up with them. In no way, she heard Ichigo bellow. This was quickly followed by several shouts from Ichigo's companions. Orihime smiled as she recognized them, everyone descending to the ground. Kurosaki-kun. Uryu. Chad. Rukia. Abarai-san. Orihime, do you know who's following you? Ishida quickly asked, hovering next to her while being inwardly impressed that Orihime had worked out how to fly using her Santen Keshin. Everyone else mimicked him, surrounding their friend and drawing their weapons. Orihime turned around to face the same way, the direction from which the enemy was approaching. No, it's a different Arankar than we've met. With a minor booming sound, the Arankar Sonido ed into view. The Arankar was incredibly tall, although part of that was almost certainly the sheer size of his head. However, the face was covered by a long, elongated mask, to the point where Ichigo half considered the idea that the Arankar was actually a wizard. The Arankar wore the white Espada outfit in such a way that not a shred of his body could be seen. However, everyone was shocked when the Espada seemed taken aback. Rukia? Rukia, is that you? Rukia could not believe her ears. She hadn't heard that voice in many decades. Kaien Dano? Renji's jaw dropped. Kaien. As in, Shiba Kaien, the Shinigami who died when he was possessed by a hollow. As in, Rukia's old Fukutecho. Everyone else leaned back in shock at this information. That's me, the Espada said behind the mask before reaching up and taking it off, revealing a very familiar face, one that made Rukia's knees quiver. Kaien Dano. Rukia breathed. This is impossible. Ichigo picked up where she left off. Wait, how is this possible? If you're this Shiba Kaien person, how did you become a hollow? And why are you working for Aizen? Kaien nodded seriously, acknowledging the need for an explanation. As Abarai-san already said, when I was a Shinigami, I was Rukia's Fukutecho. He smiled warmly. Rukia and I were very good friends. Very good friends? Rukia half laughed, half sobbed in relief. He's here. He's alive. You were the only one who treated me as my own person after the Kachiki family adopted me. Renji had the decency to flinch at that. You taught me how to use my sword, you encouraged me, you were the first person I ever showed my Shirkai to. Kaien smiled more at Rukia. Yeah. Anyways, I was married to the love of my life, Shiba Miyako. But one day, a hollow appeared, and Miyako-chan was assigned to track it down. He clenched his fist. The hollow killed her, and I swore revenge. Kaien pursued, accompanied by myself and Yukitake Taicho, Rukia continued. We found it in its lair, and Kaien requested to fight it by himself. I was granted permission, Kaien followed up, so I jumped down and fought. But as soon as my Zanpakuto touched the hollow, it broke. Apparently the hollow's power was to, once a day, be able to break any Zanpakuto it touches. My poor Nejibana. I fought back using Kido, and was doing well. I begged Yukitake Taicho to let me help him, the short black-haired Shinigami added. But I was denied, with an explanation. She took a deep breath. Rukia, remember this. There are two types of fights. Whenever we are in battle, we must be one of the two. The fight for life or, the fight for pride, she quoted, glaring lightly at Kaien out of the corner of her eye. If it were a fight to protect life, then he would have accepted the help. But otherwise, his pride would have been broken, maybe for good. Men and their stupid pride. Hey, Kaien chuckled, rubbing the back of his head in embarrassment before turning serious again. The hollow managed to get behind me, and then it showed its real power. Rukia lowered her head in sorrow. It merged with him. Yukitake Taicho told me to run, that he would fight it off, but I came back because I realized I could not face myself in the mirror every day if I did that. Yukitake Taicho fell to his illness then, and the hollow attacked me. She flinched, unable to go on. Rukia-chan killed me, Kaien said simply. But apparently the hollow had been one of Aizen's experiments, and was designed to reconstitute itself in Hueco Mundo every time it was destroyed. As it had merged with me, my body was restored, and I managed to establish dominance. I became an Espada in order to gain more strength, to take my revenge on the person ultimately responsible for Miyako-chan's death, Aizen Susuke. I managed to convince everyone that the hollow was in charge. It wasn't hard, the hollow's personality is still buried in here somewhere. I keep the mask on, so people can't see my distaste for what's happening, and to keep Aizen from seeing my true face. When it was clear that Kaien was finished, Ichigo glanced at his friends. Ishida still looked slightly suspicious, but his stance suggested that he was willing to accept the story. Ichigo, however, was unconvinced. His own forays in that line between Shinigami and Hollow refused to let him accept the story so easily. Kazidor said that a being is only truly a Hollow once the mask takes over. If he truly is the Shinigami, why is his Ryatsu so very much a Hollow's? He paused to reconsider. Then again, I don't see his Hollow whole. Maybe he's a special case. Oi, Kaien. If you're truly Kaien, a Shinigami with a hollow body, why don't you bring out your Shirkai? I'm sure Rukia will recognize it, and I know for a fact that Arankar don't have them. Kaien smiled as he drew his sword, slowly spinning it. Rankle the seas and the skies, Nejibana. The sword transformed into what looked like a trident, with a blue tassel on the end. Ichigo watched closely, but Kaien's body didn't seem to change any, as was the usual case for a resurrection. Rukia's form trembled. It's you. Oh Kami, it's really you. She rushed forward and hugged the long-thought-dead Shinigami, tears of relief flowing freely down her face. Kaien held her close as well with his free hand. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Ichigo was convinced, and a quick glance at his friends showed that they seemed to be as well. Everyone had lowered their weapons, and both Chad and Renji were smiling softly at the pair. What can you tell us about Las Noches? The lost member of the Shiba clan nodded to him. Aizen arranged to have artificial sunlight shining everywhere above it. I think this was meant to be an obstacle for me, as one of the downsides of the hollow that absorbed me is a weakness to sunlight. It burns me, which is another reason for why I wear the mask. Rukia looked up at her dear friend's face in surprise. That's horrible. Kaien shrugged. It could be worse. Ishida stepped forward. Listen, we came here to rescue Orihime. He gestured towards the girl. Quite frankly, we're at a disadvantage, coming here onto Aizen's territory. We don't know the terrain, the forces there, and I rather doubt that we're enough to combat Aizen's army. The Shinigami turned hollow nodded grimly as Rukia broke away, embarrassed at her own display earlier. I am only the Noveno Espada. From what I've heard of you guys from Grimmjow and Yami, I wouldn't be much help to you. Information is the most valuable asset anyone can have, Ishida pointed out. What can you tell us? Kaien scratched his head in thought. Aizen is planning to invade the living world and create the King's Key. We heard about that already, Renji told him impatiently. Renji, Chad rumbled, putting a hand on his arm, let him speak. Aizen originally wanted us to just stay in our rooms and wait for you to come invade, Kaien informed them. I suppose that was so we could take you on in our own territory. When the lovely lady here escaped on her own unexpectedly, I was closest, and took pursuit, we were on standing. Orders not to let her escape, and I figured that I could stage her escape with whoever was coming to rescue her later. Anything else? Rukia asked. Nothing. He doesn't really share his plans with us, Kaien told her with a self-depreciative chuckle. Sorry I can't be much help. We should remember that Soul Society is planning to send a few Taicho in here to start taking out the Espada, Chad told everyone. Renji nodded. It would be bad if Aizen became aware of it and didn't leave any Espada here while going to the living world to create the King's Key. Imagine having some of our strongest Taicho here, heavily delayed as they make their way back to a Garganta back to the living world. Yeah, that'd be bad, Ichigo agreed. So, what all do you guys think? Start taking out some of the Espada now while we've got a chance. Or head back to the living world since we've rescued Inoue. I don't think we're gonna get a much better chance, Renji stated. We've got insider information from Kaien here, all of us are here and at full strength, and according to Kaien they are separated and waiting for us. I think we should go back to the living world and wait, Rukia suggested. We already know that the Espada's Hierro is weaker outside of Hueco Mundo, which gives us a home team advantage. Plus, Urahara's worked out a way to protect all of Karakura's residents, which allows us to fight at full strength, and the Shinigami can come to the living world to aid us far faster than they can get to Hueco Mundo. That may be so, but it's usually not a wise tactical decision to wait to be attacked, Ishida pointed out. We could easily be caught unawares, and then any advantage we have in the living world could be countered. I vote we continue on. I'm sorry Uryu, Abarai-san, but I think we should go back to the living world as well, Inoue told them. There's too much chance that one of us would be captured again, maybe by a high-level Espada or maybe by Aizen himself. I agree with Rukia, we should retreat so we can have backup if we need it. I could go either way, Chad admitted. All of you have good points. We have 2 healers here, which means that we could probably hold our own for a long while. But at the same time, Ichigo only managed a draw against the Sexta Espada, Grimmjow. I'm pretty sure I speak for all of us when I say that Ichigo is the fastest one here, and he's not exactly weak in strength either. If we assume that almost every Espada above 6 is faster or stronger than Grimmjow, then we'd have one hell of a time taking them down, especially on their own turf. He shook his head. I'll go with whatever Ichigo decides. I'll abstain from voting, Kaien said seriously. I'm still going to be working towards my vengeance against Aizen, regardless of your decision. The wizard saw everyone staring at him, waiting for his vote to be cast. It would be his decision whether or not to go on. Ichigo swallowed. Personally, I want to go test myself against the Espada, to see how much I've grown. I'm sure I could take on Grimmjow and Nitra. He frowned more deeply. But I definitely see everyone's points. He paused for a moment and made his decision. Chapter 14, Betrayal. Let's go home, Ichigo finally said. We don't really have any business being here, now that we've got Inoue. Let Soul Society take care of things here, we have a home to protect, and I'll be mad if I'm not there to defend it. He turned to Ishida and Renji. We'll have plenty of chances to fight the Espada when Aizen tries to create the King's Key in Karakura, and let's not forget that the Espada can create their Garganta to get there while we're chasing them out here in Hueco Mundo. He shook his head. We must stay vigilant and protect Karakura. Ishida and Renji nodded at him, accepting the logic. Humph, the Quincy scoffed lightly, dunno when you grew a brain, but you made a couple of good points. Alright, Kurosaki, let's head back. What about Kaien though? Rukia asked, sending him a worried glance. Kaien waved them off. Go on, head back. I'll keep trying to subvert him from here. Just be sure to tell everyone I'm still around, K. Don't want to get killed just yet. How are we going to get back? Chad queried. I don't think Urahara's Garganta is still accessible, is it? Even if it was, this place is hardly full of landmarks, Rukia pointed out. I didn't bother to remember where it was. What about you guys? Ichigo and Renji shook their heads no. I don't think Urahara kept it open, Renji added bitterly. Kaien laughed. Is that all you need? Not a problem for everyone's favorite former Fukatecho. He began charging his Ryatsu, raising an arm. The higher level Espada can do it just by gesturing, but I'm not up to that level yet. Without warning, he whipped around, spinning Nejibana and creating a multitude of water, stabbing at Rukia. Caught entirely by surprise, Rukia was unprepared for the assault. While she did manage to dodge the stab instinctively, one of the trident's prongs managed to graze her side right before a wave of crushing water slammed into her and forced her to her knees several feet away. Ichigo drew Zangetsu immediately and Shunpaed in front of Kaien, his suspicions returning in full force. You are not Shiba Kaien, are you? He accused. The others had all drawn their weapons as well. In Inoue's case, her hands were at her hairpins, ready to create a defense or offense at a moment's notice, and had surrounded Kaien. Of course I'm Kaien, the Espada said with a cocky grin. It was just a test. Like Rukia told ya, I was the one who taught her how to use her sword. I just wanted to see how much she'd grown. He sent an honest smile her way. You've gotten a lot better, Rukia. It used to be that you'd have been impaled by such a surprise attack. Why? Rukia demanded, getting to her feet. Why would you attack me like that, knowing that the old me would have died in an instant? Is it really so surprising? Kaien asked. After you killed me with your own 2 hands, and condemned me to this living hell in Hueco Mundo, is it so surprising that I would want to strike back, to kill the one who killed me? You're really pissing me off. Ichigo growled, his grip around Zangetsu's hand clenching. Ichigo. Rukia barked. Everyone, please. Stay back, let me handle this. Ichigo turned to see Rukia slowly draw her own blade. Making a decision, he took several steps to the side. The others followed suit, allowing Rukia unblocked view and access to the Espada. Kaien, when I stabbed him, when he was merged with that hollow, he temporarily regained control of himself and spoke to me, hanging on through the pain of having his lungs filled with blood. Her eyes flashed dangerously. He thanked me for killing him before he could kill anyone, so he could die with a clear conscience. You may have Nejibana, you may have Kaien face, his memories. But Kaien would never use a potentially lethal strike against someone he thought might not be able to handle it. You are not Kaien. What are you talking about? Kaien asked with a grin, holding up his free hand. I really am K-. Don't say his name again. Rukia screamed, letting her Ryatsu flare in patterns around her. Dance, Sodi no Shirayuki. Some no Mai. She shunpaed out of Kaien's vision. Kaien gasped, remembering what happened next. Sparing only a glance behind him to verify his findings, he saw that Rukia was indeed behind him, slashing the air with Sodi no Shiraiki. He jumped away just as she cried out, Tsukishiro. He was just in time to avoid the pillar of ice that erupted from a white circle under his feet. Rukia whipped around, and seeing Kaien in the air, quickly stabbed 4 spots in front of her in the desert sand. Tsugi no Mai. Hakuren. She sent a wave of ice at her former mentor. Kaien countered by slashing Nejibana down into the blast, unleashing a torrent of water that delayed the Hakuren just long enough for Kaien to escape. Have you forgotten who taught you to fight, Rukia? Some no Mai, Tsukishiro. Tsugi no Mai, Hakuren. I was there when you devised those attacks. Kaien taunted. You can't possibly think you'll catch me in them. Stop acting like you're Kaien Dano when we both know you're not. Rukia demanded, rushing him and raising her sword to slice him apart physically. Kaien blocked easily. You've got guts to try to kill the same man twice, Rukia. Shut up. Rukia screeched, slashing Sodi no Shirayuki against Nejibana with all her strength with one hand. Her other one whipped up, palm towards Kaien. Heido 33, Sukatsui. It struck Kaien directly in the face, making him reel back in pain, clutching at his face. When he moved his hand away from his face, Rukia could see that Kaien was mildly burned, and he looked rather set off. That was a mistake, he snarled. Zommari. Get the girl. Hearing the mild sonic boom of a sonito, everyone whipped around to Inoue, where Zommari had appeared directly behind her and grabbed onto her arms firmly. Aizen-sama requests you stay in your quarters, he said clearly to Inoue. I am here to escort you. Soten Kiss-hun. Inoue cried, her fairies forming an oval barrier around Zommari. As it happened, Zommari's hands were outside the barrier, and the barrier simply continued around his wrists. When Zommari attempted to sonito a second later, nothing happened. What did you do, woman? He demanded. Welcome to my Soten Kiss-hun, Inoue whispered. This is my prison technique. This cannot stop me, Zommari stated calmly. All I need do is knock you unconscious, and your power will disappear. At that moment, Ichigo shunpaed next to them and sliced Zangetsu straight down, attempting to cleave Zommari's hands off. Sensing the danger, Zommari quickly brought his hands back into the barrier, which closed up the moment he had. Now the Espada was completely trapped. I apologize, Aranjero, the captured Arankar stated slowly. It seems I underestimated them. Then allow me to finish them, Kaien answered with a sigh, deflecting Rukia's next physical strike with ease. Ichigo gripped Zangetsu more firmly. I won't let you. No, Ichigo. Rukia barked. He's mine. Tsugi no Mai, Hakuren. Kaien leapt up and to the side, dodging the wave of ice. He's taken Kaien Dano's form, and pretended to be him. I need to do this. I need to be the one to finish him, to finish what I started so long ago. How touching, Kaien commented with a grin. Instead of accepting your friend's help, you want to kill me, your precious Kaien Dano. You are not Kaien Dano, Rukia responded, her voice as cold as her Zanpakuto's ice. Aranjero, was it? Tell the truth, she bellowed. A very deep voice answered her from within Kaien's head. Very well. With a disgusting noise, Kaien's face began to distort and melt away, until it was clear that there was a long cylinder for a head, a tank filled with some sort of red liquid, lighter than and not as thick as blood. Inside the tank were 2 heads, each tattooed with the number 9. Allow us to introduce ourselves, a higher-pitched voice came from the lower head. We are Aranjero Ararori, they finished together. Noveno Espada. Flesh began to appear on the cylinder, swiftly forming Kaien's face once more. When Aranjero spoke, Kaien's voice came out. You asked for the truth, Rukia. He grinned maniacally. My power is to completely take all the powers of the hollows I eat. Unlike any other Espada, I have unlimited potential to evolve. Ichigo had sickening feeling he knew what was next. But he was beat to the punch by Ishida's intellect. You were telling the truth about how Shiba Kaien, or at least the hollow that merged with him, reformed in Hueco Mundo using Shiba-san's spirit body, Ishida stated more than guessed, pushing his glasses up to the bridge of his nose. But you found and ate him, didn't you? Which gave you the abilities of Shiba Kaien, and the hollow that absorbed him. That's how you can use Shiba-san's body, his memory, and his Zanpakuto. Correct, Quincy. Rukia shook her head, her hands trembling at the revelation. I thought I saved you, Kaiendano, instead I only prolonged your agony. Oi, Rukia, you okay? Renji called out, concerned. She's not okay, and she won't be, Aranero revealed with a smirk. That's right, Kaien is in here, screaming. He desperately wants to take over, but that won't happen. I'm far too strong for that. Rukia fell to her knees. Kaiendano is alive. Within the Espada. She looked at her Zanpakuto, feeling weak. She no longer had the strength of will or of body to kill the Espada, not while Kaien was still fighting. Rukia! Ichigo yelled. Don't listen to him. Don't you remember what you told me? If Kaien was really eaten by this a-hole, then killing him will free Kaien's spirit through the purification of our Zanpakuto. Rukia's head jerked up at that. Yes, that's right. Slaying a hollow with a Zanpakuto purifies it of all the deeds done as a hollow, and sends the spirit to soul society. Any soul that has been eaten undergoes the same process. Hope began to fill her, and her hands steadied as she rose to her feet. If I slay you, Aranero, then I will free Kaiendano. Aranero frowned using Kaien's face. DMNU, you orange-haired BSTRD. I had her right where I wanted her. Now she's more determined than ever. He began to understand just how Kurosaki Ichigo frustrated his superiors so, and how he intrigued Aizen-sama. I see you found your resolve. But you will never manage to kill me. He reached over with his right hand, the crook of his elbow holding Nejibana up, and took off his left glove, revealing a truly disgusting, writhing form of flesh that resembled a tentacle whose end had been cut off. Several smaller tentacles grew from approximately where the wrist should be. Say hello to my own Zanpakuto. Devour, Glotoneria. Aranero's lower half dissolved, reforming into a rapidly expanding purplish blob that had several tentacles waving around. It looked like a blob-style octopus, with several mouths forming on the middle of some of the appendages. Ichigo couldn't help it, he laughed aloud. Just how are you supposed to move quickly like that, he taunted. Now all of Rukia's attacks are gonna hit you, and you'll shatter just like that. Even my old, slower self could hit you now, Chad added with a smirk. Ishida actually turned away. This is embarrassing, why would any Espada actually make himself slower and less able to dodge his enemy's attacks when that was all that saved him earlier? Rukia, if you would do the honors. Renji asked with a mocking smile at Aranero. Gladly. Rukia quickly pierced the ground 4 times in front of her in a semicircle. Tsugi no Mai. Hakuren. A wave of ice rushed over, only to be stopped by a tidal wave of water flowing from Nejibana. Nice try, Rukia, Aranero mocked. My turn. In this form, I can use all the powers of all the hollows I have ever eaten. He grinned. And I've eaten over 33, so try this one on for size. 2 of his many appendages shaped themselves into an enormous scorpion-like tail which began to launch ball of an unsavory-looking substance at Rukia, who had to repeatedly shunpa out of the way. It was a good thing she did, the yellow-green ball exploded on impact. If I can just strike the head, he'll be finished. Rukia thought coldly, now shunpa-ng next to Aranero's torso and swinging Sodi no Shirayuki. But to her enormous surprise, her Zanpakuto shattered on impact. Did you forget, Rukia? Aranero asked, almost kindly even as he backhanded her back to the ground. When I swung Nejibana into that hollow, Metastasia, my sword shattered. You are not Kaiendano. Rukia screamed angrily, picking herself back up just in time to dodge another shot from the scorpion tail. Even so, your Zanpakuto is gone, Aranero told her with an evil smile. And you're the one who made this a fight for pride, no one else will interfere. How do you plan to purify me without it? You only shattered the blade, the short Shinigami informed him, holding the hilt of Sodi no Shirayuki firmly. San no mai. What? Erinjiro gasped. You have a third dance. Shirafune. Rukia called out, holding the hilt in front of her. Before the Erinkar's very eyes, Rukia's Zanpakuto reformed from ice particles that quickly flowed from the remnants of the Shinigami's other attacks. She glared at Erinjiro. Kaien Dano, allow me to free you. She lunged forward and, instead of aiming at the body of Kaien, she plunged her sword into the blob that had formed Erinjiro's Resurrection. Ha, what a weak attack. Erinjiro taunted, before realizing he was losing feeling. He looked down and extended a few of his tentacles. Before his very eyes, they were slowing and being encased in ice. What is this? My third dance, Shirafune, Rukia informed him frigidly. You think one of my dances would only reform my Zanpakuto if it breaks? Of course not. My pride, Sodi no Shirayuki's pride, would never accept that. Shirafune reforges my Zanpakuto with the coldest of ice. So cold, that anything that touches my sword will freeze solid. Feel it, Erinjiro Ararori, as your blood slows in your veins, as you find yourself weak. Die, Noveno Espada, knowing that I, Kuchiki Rukia of the 13th Division, have avenged Shiba Kaien. Through Rukia's speech, Erinjiro's eyes widened as he struggled mightily. His tentacles would respond extremely sluggishly as they were encased by the ice. He could feel the ice almost reach the body he had taken from Kaien. If I die, then you all will die with me. Using all of his Ryatsu and strength, he ripped the scorpion tail from its icy prison and launched an enormous ball of combustive death Inoue Orihime. Inoue's eyes widened, but she knew better than to freeze up. Santen Keshin, she cried out, forming a large triangular shield that she prayed was strong enough to withstand the blast. Getsuga Tensho. Ichigo roared. At the same time, Ishida pulled back a very large arrow and shot it. Both attacks collided with Erinjiro's last attack and caused it to explode early. Inoue held strong, focusing her Ryatsu into the shield, holding off the shock of the explosion. Her Santen Keshin first cracked, and then shattered as the last of the attack faded away. She bent to her knees, heavily winded from expending so much at once. Erinjiro grinned as he saw the result, even as the ice crept up his neck. As the ice encased his head, he screamed. Zommari! Kill them all! And then the ice covered his face. Rukia wasted no time withdrawing her sword from the new statue of ice, leaping up and beheading the monstrous Noveno Espada, trusting that her friends could hold off Zommari for a few moments. Inoue, hearing Erinjiro's scream, felt horror take root in her heart even as she turned and saw the Septima Espada released from Inoue's Soten Kishun prison. And then her world went black. Zommari brought his hand back up from the expert chop to the back of her neck, putting in just enough effort to knock her out. I am sorry, Erinjiro. But Aizen-sama left very strict orders. A moment later, both he and Inoue were gone, just in time to avoid being beheaded from Renji and Ichigo, having come to him from either side. Kurosaki. Ishida barked, leaping up and following Zommari's trail with his Hirenkyaku. Already on it. Ichigo replied, flickering into a Shuinpa. To his mild surprise, Ishida was noticeably faster than he was before Ichigo had left. You've gotten faster, he complimented. Of course. What do you think I've been doing while you were gone, Kurosaki? Having tea and lying about? Ichigo frowned, ignoring his friend in favor of sensing outwards. Zommari was slowly but surely pulling away, and they were almost at Las Noches. F. It. Bankai. Ishida didn't bat an eye as Ichigo suddenly vanished from sight. Instead, he merely picked up the pace as well, and felt enormous satisfaction at the shocked look in Ichigo's eyes. Yes, Kurosaki, I am now as fast as your Bankai, the Quincy gloated, readying his bow. Now that Ichigo was closer, and not completely preoccupied with an opponent, he noticed that Ishida's bow had changed. It now resembled a curved spider web more than anything else. Nice bow. Any new abilities? Recognizing that Ichigo was trying to exchange possibly vital combat capabilities right before battle, Ishida refrained from mocking him. I can fire up to 1,200 shots consecutively, though they are naturally weaker than my normal shots. I can also change the direction of my shot somewhat after firing it. Anything I should know? Mask got an upgrade, and I've learned a couple supplementary moves with Zangetsu, but they have a charge time. Should be able to use Zero, but haven't tried yet, Ichigo summarized. Be ready, we're almost upon him. You don't have to tell me, Kurosaki. Meanwhile, Rukia, Renji and Chad looked at each other. Why do you think they left us behind? Renji asked his friends. I just fought and killed an Espada, Rukia pointed out. I suppose I should take a few moments to rest and recover my Ryatsu. Chad nodded. They left us to guard you during your recovery while they recover Inoue. Are you okay, Rukia? Renji asked carefully. He didn't want to offend her, but her emotions had obviously been on a roller coaster in the last half hour. Rukia sighed, sitting down in the sands of Hueco Mundo. I'm as well as can be expected. I merely hope that Kaien Dano returned to Soul Society upon my slaying Erinjero. Failing that, I can take comfort that he will be reincarnated eventually. She shook her head with a self-deprecating chuckle. I really thought Ichigo might be his reincarnation, you know. My second chance to save his soul. They are a lot alike, Renji admitted, sitting next to her as he gathered his courage. Is that why you like Ichigo so much? He held his breath. He was taking a chance being upfront about Rukia's obvious attraction to the orange-haired idiot. Rukia glared mildly at Renji. Just what are you saying, Renji? Her pineapple-haired friend swallowed the lump that had formed in his throat. I'm saying that no matter how I look at it, you seem to be attracted to Kurosaki Ichigo. I'm just wondering why. What makes you say that? Rukia asked emotionlessly. Renji flinched at her tone nonetheless, but was determined to make his point. You're comfortable enough to banter with him and beat on him when you keep yourself distant from almost everyone else. If I'm not mistaken, you are highly sensitive to his Ryatsu, and he was the first thing you thought of when I asked you to come along on our mission to protect Karakura. You sleep in his closet for crying out loud. I don't know what all happened during that time when Ichigo had all your powers, but obviously something must have. You're closer to him than you are to any of your old friends. The ice-using Shinigami gaped for a moment and then schooled her face into a stern look. I suppose I can see how you reached that conclusion, Renji. She sighed. Ichigo is nothing but a very good friend. Yes, Karakura is associated with Ichigo for me, because I met him there and that encounter changed both our lives permanently. Yes, I am sensitive to his Ryatsu, because I was there, living with him constantly putting out such Ryatsu all the time. I am sensitive to your Ryatsu as well, I hope you know. Renji did not know that, as a matter of fact, but he waved her on anyway. Rukia nodded in acknowledgement. I sleep in his closet for a simple reason, because that is what we are accustomed to, and it's easier for me to be there to explain the odd thing to Ichigo when he needs it. So you wouldn't be interested in dating Ichigo? Renji asked to clarify. He understood everything she said, but he wanted to hear a blunt rejection. Rukia suddenly had a sneaking suspicion she knew what her friend was doing. She pointed a finger at him with wide eyes. You're trying to hook me up with Ichigo. What? No. Renji denied. You are. Rukia looked at him angrily. I don't need you to find me a suitor. Did Nisama put you up to this? Huh? Renji blinked. Why would Kuchiki Taicho send me of all people to find you a suitor? Because you work for him, and you know me well enough to find people I could stand to marry for politics. I assure you, Rukia, that was never my intention. I was asking as your friend, Renji said softly. I haven't been a part of your life in a long while, and then that whole mess with your execution, and now the errand car, and saving Inoue. Rukia softened and settled down. Sorry, she offered. It's okay. Chad cleared his throat, making both his companions jump. They'd completely forgotten that the gentle giant was there. Rukia, if you're finished recovering, we should attempt to rejoin Ichigo and Ishida. Agreed. She got up and dusted the sands of Hueco Mundo off her clothes. Alright, let's go. Renji followed suit as they began to run. He felt somewhat better, now that he'd finally asked his childhood friend her feelings for Ichigo. While he recognized he'd never gotten an answer for Rukia's possible interest in the substitute Shinigami, Renji was put at ease. He was even able to convince himself that there was still a chance for him. Cool it, he told himself sternly, if a touch sadly. Wait until after the war's over. And don't get your hopes up. Renji felt a stirring in his mind, one which he had come to recognize as his Zanpakuto wishing to converse. Why wait? Zommari asked simply. Why not let yourself hope? Rukia is a Kuchiki, Renji confessed. A noble. Her brother is my Taicho, and I don't feel I have a chance. I've seen what happens to noble families. They get married off for political gains, and I have very little political power. He would never approve. Zommari shifted somewhat. The wielder of Senbon Zakura. Kuchiki Byakuya. He is your foe. Renji felt like laughing bitterly, and he could feel Zommari get the impression. He is a potential foe. Before I can know, I need to know how Rukia feels. Why? That was actually a good question. Renji's ambition was to become stronger than Kuchiki Byakuya. That was his whole reason for going to Kuchiki Taicho's squad, becoming his Fukuteicho. It was a major reason for his efforts into learning Bankai. One way or another, Zommari and Senbon Zakura would clash. Okay, now that I think about it, yes, Kuchiki Byakuya is my foe. If we can defeat him, then I would feel much better about asking to court Rukia. Then we shall defeat him and prove our strength. You grow stronger every day, and become more adept at our Bankai. Remember, Renji, that when our Bankai was not even a day old, we forced Kuchiki Byakuya into Bankai and nearly defeated him. Renji nodded to himself, taking heart at the encouragement. Do you have any suggestions on how we can get stronger? Your foe favors Kido. Recall how he locked us in place with that Bakudo and then brought us to defeat with his Bankai. Learn how to counter it, and you take away one of his greatest strengths. As always, Zommari made the solution sound so simple, and it made sense. Thank you, Zommari. You are welcome, Renji. Zommari's presence retreated into his inner world, and Renji nodded once more to himself, feeling his resolve strengthen now that he had a plan. Ichigo and Ishida had caught up with Zommari, who had realized the inevitability of their arrival and set Inoue against the wall of Las Noches. You have arrived, Zommari noticed. Your powers of observation are astounding, Ichigo taunted. Zommari laughed quietly, as though at a private joke. You two are very fast, I will concede. I have the fastest sonido amongst the Espada. Shall we have a contest of speed? Allow me to reintroduce myself. I am Zommari Leroux, Septima Espada. Septima? Only one step below Grimmjow. Careful, Ishida, Ichigo warned. He's not boasting about that speed of his, he's so fast he leaves tangible afterimages. Zommari turned calm eyes on the Shinigami. I wonder how you know about that. Unless you are that Arankar I talked to earlier today. Let's just say he and I are rather close, Ichigo said mysteriously, gripping Tensa Zangetsu tightly. Give us back Inoue, and we won't kill you. Or at least I won't, he corrected himself, glancing at his Quincy partner. Not so sure about Ishida here. Instinct flared and both Ichigo and Ishida leapt out of the way in opposite directions as two clones of Zommari appeared behind them and attempted to stab them with his sword. You have excellent reflexes, the Arankar that they'd been addressing complimented. But it is arrogance to think that you can defeat me. And your arrogance shows simply by that very statement, Ishida commented, firing 3 arrows at once, each of them rocketing towards Zommari. One of them was struck and vanished, while the other 2 sonidoed out of the way, reappearing several feet to Ishida's side. It doesn't matter if there's 1 or 3 of you, I have no need to guess which one is the original. Kurosaki, protect Orihime. Make sure no more Arrancar come to take her away while I finish this weakling. Ishida's sure giving a lot of orders lately, Ichigo thought to himself as he shunpaed next to Orihime and gently picked her up. Think you can take him alone? Ishida glared at him before vanishing with his Hirenkyaku, neatly avoiding another strike from his opponent. He reappeared several meters away, firing several more arrows at Zommari, who dodged and cloned himself to replace the copies who had been struck. Kurosaki, stop wasting time and just go. With a single nod of acknowledgement, Ichigo vanished with all the speed of his Bankai-enhanced Shunpa, taking the unconscious Inoue with him. A shame you sent them away, Zommari said calmly, I would have greatly enjoyed what is about to happen next then. As it is, you have proven that I will not catch you with my own sword under normal circumstances. Ishida raised an eyebrow as the clones vanished, leaving only the single Zommari. You are about to use your resurrection. Indeed. Ishida scoffed. Whatever it is, you will not defeat me. And there is your arrogance, human. It is foolish to think that a human, no matter how gifted, can defeat an Espada. Then allow me to prove you wrong. Release your resurrection, Espada, and this Quincy will destroy you, Ishida challenged, using his free hand to push his glasses up his nose a little, making them flash. Zommari shook his head ruefully, as though disappointed. Very well then. He brought his Zanpakuto up horizontally in front of him, then let go. His sword stayed there, levitating in front of him as the Espada took a bracing stance, as though preparing to catch something heavy, but then moved his hands to either side of him. He looked as though he were meditating, almost. Then his head slowly tilted further and further, his neck twisting, until it was perpendicular to the rest of his body. Suppress, Brujeria. His Zanpakuto abruptly bent, again and again until it was in an edged spiral shape. Mist exuded from it and Ishida could feel the mist melding with Zommari's Ryatsu. When the transformation was over a few moments later, Zommari's new form was revealed. His upper body was still that of a human, though now covered in a white skin-tight outfit that revealed only his face and hands. However, similarly to Aranyero's resurrection, Zommari had completely lost his legs, which had reformed into a large pumpkin-like shape. However, the most notable thing about him was that all over his body, eyes had appeared. Ishida frowned. Those eyes must have a purpose. His power, whatever it is, must be strong and difficult to elude in order to make up for his apparent inability to move. His eyes widened as Zommari raised a hand towards him. His palm contained an eye, and it suddenly pulsed with Ryatsu. In that instant, he vanished with a burst of Hirenkyaku. A moment later, he reappeared several meters away, and glanced in the direction of where he had been. What? Nothing seems to have happened. You are wondering what happened, Zommari stated more than guessed. Your intuition told you to move, that I was about to attack, and yet nothing happened. He smiled triumphantly. And yet something has happened. Look at your left hand. Ishida did and gasped. A sun symbol had appeared on the back of his hand. A glower settled on his face as he quickly ran through one of his Quincy exercises to limber up his fingers. I see the symbol, Arrancar, but what does it do? To understand, you must realize that everything has a sovereignty to it. Everything is ruled by something else. A peasant is ruled by his local lord, who is then ruled by the king. But the peasant rules his house and possessions. Zommari smiled. What my resurrection does, is allow me to usurp that rule. Each of my eyes has the ability to steal sovereignty over whatever it sees, and allows me to use it as though it were a part of me. Now, intruder, I have taken your left hand. To demonstrate, extend towards me, left hand. To Ishida's horror, his left hand darted out, reaching for its new master, pulling his arm along with it. Nevertheless, he stood his ground. This is bad. He's already drastically reduced my effectiveness. What can I do? That's it. As you can see, my power allows me to use your own body against you. Your brain no longer commands your left hand. If I hit you in the head, then I can control your whole body. This ability. I call it Amor, the Espada finished. Now then, little archer, left hand, choke him. The hand made no movement. I said choke him. It won't work, the Quincy told him with a smirk, using his left hand to raise his glasses up a little, making them flash. But how? Zommari demanded, infuriated. Your sun symbol is a marker of your Ryatsu, Ishida analyzed. It does indeed allow you to manipulate whatever has that symbol to do what you wish. However, I am a Quincy, bound by mortal limits, and our bodies succumb to the susceptibilities of age. To counter that, we created a technique that allows our old to use their bodies with all the dexterity and speed of their youth, through use of spirit threads controlled directly by my brain to use our body like we would a puppet. We call it Ransatengai. He glared at his opponent. You may have imprinted your own control over my hand, but I can counter with my Ransatengai. And as your Amor and my Ransatengai counter each other, my brain is able to use its normal currents to direct my body. All I have to do is use my Ransatengai to move in direct opposite whatever you command. Having regained control of himself, Zommari smiled. I must admit, I am impressed that a lowly human could come so far. But I must wonder. I have many eyes. It must take quite some concentration and constant attention to counter my ability from one eye. Can you counter them all and still fight? Ishida gripped his bow firmly and formed an arrow. We'll see. He vanished into Hirenkyaku, going around the Espada, quietly counting the number of eyes he had as he dodged the blasts of Amor and fired back some arrows at the Arrancar's torso, which Zommari blocked with spots on his body that were not covered in eyes. 50 eyes. He smiled. I'm quite possibly the worst opponent you could have ever faced, Zommari. Oh, why is that? Because I'm an archer, and you're nothing but weak points. Ishida let loose a flurry of arrows, managing to hit 5 out of 12 eyes on Zommari's lower body. The other 7 had suddenly closed, covered by the same pink flesh-like material that made up Zommari's lower half. The open eyes, upon being hit, imploded. Zommari screamed in pain. You arrogant wretch, he bellowed. You cannot protect all your eyes without sacrificing your ability, Ishida taunted. I will pick them off one at a time, and then I will take your head. Fine, Zommari growled. Let's see how you dodge all of my eyes at once. I must protect my head at all costs. Ishida used Hirenkyaku to once more get behind Zommari, where he'd eliminated the 5 eyes, and crouched down, using his spiderweb bow as a shield. He winced as several of the eyes pulsed in unison and hit his bow at once, making it buckle. But Ishida wasn't being idle. A silver rod strikes the 5-fingered stone bed. Ishida used his free hand to grip one of his silver tubes from his utility belt, wincing as his bow shattered under the onslaught and he could feel his legs being taken over. Quintuple restraining frames. He flung the silver tube at the Espada. What? The Espada suddenly found himself in complete darkness. What did you do? He demanded. The Quincy smiled as he saw that Zommari was surrounded on all sides by his stone prison, emblazoned with a 5-pointed Quincy cross. Ishida stood up and brushed himself off, realizing that by cutting off his opponent's sight, the sun symbols were no longer on him. He was free from Amor. That was another Quincy technique, grits. It allows me to completely envelop a target in a stone casing, covered by our Quincy cross. It can be broken out of with enough strength, but as you seem to have no legs, I purposely made it so the stone is more than your arm's length away. You cannot use your eyes, you cannot hit me. Know in your final moments that it was I, Ishida Uryu, Quincy, that killed you. No. Curse you! Zommari screamed, unleashing his eyes again and again on his imprisonment, but finding himself unable to escape. He would have to use Siro, or Gran Rey Siro, but the truth of the matter was that he had not done so in quite some time, in favor of using his eyes, which were faster than either of those. He had always derived amusement by watching his enemies tear themselves apart under his spell. As a result, he needed several seconds to charge, which he wasted no time beginning. Even so, he knew his end was near. Hail Aizen-sama! Ishida needed no such charge time. Drawing a seal Schneider from his belt, he pulled it back on his newly recreated bow, and fired directly for Zommari's head. It easily pierced the rock, and went straight through the Espada's skull. The Quincy technique grits fell apart under the Reiatsu-absorbing abilities of the seal Schneider, revealing the undoubtedly dead form of Zommari. Ishida retrieved the seal Schneider, deactivating it and storing it in his belt once more, watching as Zommari faded away. Sensing Ichigo nearby, Ishida Uryu once again used his high-speed technique to rejoin them. Ishida. Ichigo greeted. How was he? I take it was he as a bit of a pushover, given your complete lack of wounds. Pathetic, the Quincy scoffed. Though he might have given you trouble. Ichigo growled at the insult, and was about to retort when his rival continued. I was perhaps the worst kind of opponent he could have come up against. He had the ability to wrest control of one's body away from you. Like I said, Kurosaki, he might have given you trouble. One hit from that move and your precious Bankai would be slitting your own throat. I was only able to counter it with a Quincy technique. Ichigo's mouth clamped shut audibly. Fine. Well, we have everyone now, he said, changing the subject. Let's go home. Seeing the nods of his friends, he put on his Jillian mask and ripped open a Garganta, jumping in. His comrades swiftly followed. Aizen Sasuke frowned. He'd lost 2 Espada, the Septima and the Noveno, and there had been no casualties on his enemy's side. Hell, no one had even been seriously injured. In addition, the girl had escaped, and their entire force was returning to the human world to guard it. He hadn't expected that Kurosaki brat to be able to open a Garganta just as effortlessly as Aizen's Espada. That meant that the living world would have more powerful fighters waiting for him to invade. Looks like that substitute Shinigami's made some powerful friends, Aizen-sama. Jin commented. He didn't even fight at all. Indeed. Does this change our plan at all? Tosin asked from behind Aizen's throne. No. Be ready to leave as soon as the Taicho from Soul Society invade. I hope you're ready, Kurosaki Ichigo. He smiled. I look forward to crushing you once again, and then sacrificing your entire town in front of you.